The man was sitting near the screens. There were many of them. He was watching something. He watched the screen intently, his face expressing no emotion at all. The guy was under surveillance. He was tied up and passed out. The man who was watching everything entered the room where the unknown guy was. The guy woke up but did not understand everything that was happening well. There were many questions in his head. The man was surprised at the guy's calmness, and he didn't understand where he was. The guy was in the arena. It was very strange, and the cheers of the fans could be heard in the room. These screams created an incomprehensible atmosphere, and different memories began to come to the guy. The guy began to remember the battles, the screams of the people who were rooting for him. The man said that the guy would enter the arena again, but he did not want to participate in this anymore. The man said that such a desire would not last long, because the guy turns into a monster who wants a fight. The guy at first didn't understand what he was talking about, and then suddenly switched off. The man continued to talk about some new life. He said that gradually the guy would begin to lose his mind, because he was stuck in this place until his death. There will be no feelings during what is happening, and afterward there will only be consequences, but only if the guy survives. The guy was still passed out, and the man threw him to the floor. The man continued his speech and said that if you're lucky, it's better to just not open your eyes. Something incomprehensible began to happen to the guy, some transformation of which he clearly did not want. And now he is no longer himself, standing in the arena, waiting for a fierce battle, listening to the screams of the fans. He begins to think that this is his story, and by any means he wants to survive and get out of this hell. Events move to school, where a little boy is in class. The children were given forms that they must fill out and give to the teacher. One of the tasks was to talk about his family. The boy's family was not the best. The father was an alcoholic and beat the boy. This made him difficult. The neighbor at his desk began to ask the boy about difficulties in the family. This put him in an awkward position. He was ashamed to say anything about it, because it could have a negative impact on his reputation. Therefore, back in the second grade, he decided that his classmates would not know anything about it. But if the teacher finds out about this, there is a chance that he will help him. The boy threw away his form, justifying himself by saying that he had made a mistake and had written it incorrectly. And then he came out with a questionnaire, talking about how much he loves his family. The boy sat and watched as his mother took care of her child, who was injured. His family was very different. The father was very rude and did not spare his child. In class, he talked about a wonderful, fun weekend at the amusement park. In fact, some other families spent such a weekend, and the boys simply overheard their conversation. The boy's mother left immediately after the birth of his son. His father did not love him, but in class he talked about something completely different and said that he was the happiest. The boy lied, and his classmates listened to him with delight. The boy believed that if he turned off his emotions, he would definitely be able to withstand everything. Whatever happens, he needs to endure because right now he can't do anything. He assured himself that he needed to wait, and then he would be able to achieve success. Very soon he would succeed. This little boy has grown up, and now Ian is interviewing for a university. His goal was to get into this university and fulfill all his dreams. The commission noticed Ian's efforts, his desire to study, and winning many awards was a plus. But nevertheless, Ian's grades were slightly below the passing grades, and the commission asked his opinion on this matter. Ian started studying much later than others because he considered himself different, but he grew up. He developed a lack of a higher level of development than others. Ian was confident that he would be able to overcome all obstacles as before. The guy passed the interview, which couldn't help but rejoice. He had a feeling that all the hard things were behind him, and now he received a reward for everything that he had endured. Ian went to university, and now if he still finds a job, he can live happily. Now he can truly enjoy and live smiling every day. The only thing Yang could think about was plans for a bright future. Despite all the happiness and success, the guy forgot about one important thing. Every hard day is replaced by another, even harder. The people in the house were surprised to see Ian, but they were also surprised that he was the son of their debtor. Parents should not do this to their children. People warned Father Ian and got ready to leave. They did not pass by Ian either, and tried to offend him, telling him not to be like his father. Ian was disappointed. Everything good that happened that day was immediately covered by the bad. The pain of what was happening consumed the guy, because why was all this happening in his life? Everything was destroyed. The unfortunate father only added sadness to all the unpleasant events. The father says something unexpected but typical for him. He said that Ian must find a job. Ian was upset. He looked at how much he would receive in one semester, and this amount was negligible. The guy thought that with the advent of happiness, a new stage in his life would begin. Despite all the disappointment that happened, Yang will definitely cope with it as before, and Ian met his failures halfway in order to quickly deal with it and live happily. He began to struggle. There was no time to rest at all. There was no sleep due to anxiety, and his body and mind were only working at half capacity. But something was wrong about this. Despite the extreme fatigue, the guy's body was in perfect order. Ian was already starting to think that someone had cursed him, because things couldn't be like that. Without rest, this is pure hell and not life. The university has already distributed freshmen, but sometimes Ian got distracted by going for walks with friends when he had a little time. 3 months later, Ian received a salary, but this was not enough, and he had to continue working. But tomorrow is the first class at the university. The guy must go there. As soon as he finished his morning delivery, he would go to classes. Time flew by very quickly. As soon as classes are over, you need to go to work and then delivery and back to the university. Ian can cope with everything, however, as always, if he turns off everything in himself. The guy walked and thought if he endures it, everything will end, and he will have a happy life. How then did he realize that he had been walking for quite a long time, and it seemed that Ian had gotten lost? The whole world was dark. I think it was because the guy had trouble sleeping. But in an instant, everything came back, and something completely unexpected happened, which greatly surprised me. A guy flew near Jan and fell to the ground. This alarmed him even more. There were people in front who were shouting and betting. They were asking for more. One of the fighters approached the young man and offered a fight. Ian didn't want to agree. He had gone too far and it worried him. In the blink of an eye, a large pile of money flew at him. This frightened him even more. A guy approached Ian who offered a fight on the condition that all the money on the ground was his. The guy didn't want to agree. He went down that road, but fighting for money is not his thing. The other continued to persuade him, offering him a large sum of money as a bonus. Ian was faced with a difficult choice, because money would not hurt him, but the way to get it was not the most acceptable. Ian was wondering if they would really just give him the money. He didn't understand why it was needed. The guy who offered him the fight had a lot of money, and therefore it was not a problem for him. Young didn't know what decision to make. He remembered an incident from his work. Recently, he approached his boss about reducing his salary. The boss replied that it was because he was a student. The man continued to say that at his age, it is difficult to find a job, and therefore he should be grateful for what he has. Ian makes a difficult decision for himself and agrees to the fight, accepting the money. The guy said that the fight lasts for 5 minutes. There are no rules of the fight and it's time to start. Ian thought that 5 minutes is not a lot, but the money is enough. The attacker started the fight completely unexpectedly, which surprised the guy. Young asked to wait for the enemy, but he did not seem to hear him. The guy stood in bewilderment, but the striker really liked this game. The fans were very entertained and enjoyed what they saw. The guy sitting next to him reminded that ordinary people should not participate in such battles. They could get hurt. The blonde guy replied that he wanted it himself, and now they just need to have fun. Then the guy teased his interlocutor that he was also here for the money. Therefore, he was not much different from Ian. At this time, the battle continued, and Yang's opponent was serious. Strong blows, full of cruelty and desire for victory. No mercy on the part of the enemy. Young did not try to participate in the fight, but only tried to defend himself. This surprised his opponent, and even forced him to stop. But the enemy immediately came to his senses, and continued to strike. To a certain extent, he was trying to somehow bring out Ian. Young still stood there without resisting. The spectators were amazed by such actions and began to talk strangely. The guy who offered Ian the fight began betting that he would fall in 5 minutes, and suggested that others do the same. Yang's opponent was at a loss, and already directly asked him if he would finally do something. His opponent thought that he decided to just stand there and then get the money, because everything is here for fun, and the enemy began to act further with great violence. He brutally grabbed Ian by the hair, but the guy continued to endure. Spectators began to place bets, because no one believed that Ian could last longer than 5 minutes. The guys were nearby, and the enemy said that he also wanted to get money. But for this, he needed to win. And suddenly he strikes unexpectedly. With all the strength and cruelty that he had, he told Ian that after a couple of blows he would fall, and in the end everyone would be in a good plus. Being in this situation, the guy remembered his childhood and his father's bullying. Ian always endured when his father beat him. He told himself that it was not difficult, and he could withstand everything. If he completely turns off fear and pain, he will definitely not feel anything. At the hospital, the doctor clarified his complaints. Ian had no appetite and did not react to pain at all. The father said that everything was fine with his son, but today he lost consciousness. This alerted him. The doctor explained that Ian's brain is different, due to the fact that he has lost many nerve cells, which is why he does not feel pain and hunger. The doctor did not know the exact cause of cell loss, so they needed to come in regularly for examination and treatment. The father had already agreed, but he was interested in whether insurance would be able to cover all the expenses for treatment. but the doctor said that insurance would not be able to cover everything and would have to pay extra. My father did not like this. He began to claim that his child lost consciousness by mistake only once. Therefore, he did not need such expensive treatment because he is a father and knows better. He took Ian and headed for the exit, finally saying that they were not doctors at all, but some kind of charlatans. Time passed and Ian grew up with those unsolvable problems. He still did not react to the pain and endured. The father, getting drunk, pestered his son and tried to force him to take out those emotions that he had hidden for a long time. His classmates considered him a robot. He was always on his own and did not communicate with anyone. The school psychologist asked him about what was bothering the guy, but he was in no hurry to open up. She asked how long he would keep everything to himself, and there were also questions about how Ian relieved stress. Ian took another blow and all this was spinning in his head. He was close to the end. A guy from the audience thought that he had to stop this, or the outcome of everything would not be the best. The guy couldn't breathe, and he again began to remember those times at school and his conversation with the psychologist. She asked if Ian could breathe, and his answer was shocking and very surprising. All because Ian wasn't breathing. When he's out of breath and it's hard for him to breathe, he just doesn't breathe. The blonde guy began to say that the end of the battle was near. He was counting on more, but apparently it wouldn't work out. The enemy said that he was doing a very good job, but Yang was already almost powerless. The guy had a conversation with a psychologist in his head. He didn't understand how the guy couldn't breathe. While the guy was not breathing, he felt as if his body was drowning and becoming empty. Despite all this, his body still remained in perfect order. Today, at this fight, he was finally convinced of this. Even when he's not breathing, when he's working like a robot, when he's awake and when he's going crazy, his body will be perfectly fine. His opponent did not understand what was happening. He hit him right in the jaw and he still survived. Ian was confident that his body would hold up as it always had. The blonde guy had already started shouting for the fight to end because he had made a bet that it would not last even 5 minutes. If Yang is not overcome, then his opponent will gain nothing. Ian's opponent got angry and told him to just fall already, and then they would get the money. And in a moment when Ian continued to be bullied, the unexpected happens. He decides to take everything. Yang is filled with determination. Gathering all his strength, he begins to confront his opponent. Now it was not Ian who suffered, but received from him. This was not at all like the guy he always endured, but now he decided to fight. Young's opponent did not understand what happened, because he did not want to fight. From the audience, the guy who wanted to help was surprised, because Ian looked like he was going to die. The enemy had already begun to worry. He did not understand when Yang was going to stop. Ian was serious, his persistence was surprising, and he also began to accelerate very quickly. A guy from the audience was surprised by Yan's performance in the fight, and they thought that they could learn from him. The enemy did not want to endure, and thought that he needed to seize the moment to fight back, and so he makes up his mind. He waits for the moment and has already decided to strike back, and this happens. But something completely unexpected happens. Ian fights back and his opponent flies away. Everyone present was completely shocked by this. Ian won. He finally began to fight and won. Patience ends and the fight begins. All the spectators were dumbfounded. No one hoped that Ian could do it. This was the best fun for them. Everyone who bet on Ian began to take their money with great joy. The blonde guy experienced great disappointment because he was hoping to win. But in the end, it was as if he had just been cheated. Ian began to collect his money because this is why he was here, and he really needed the money. A fair-haired guy approached him. He wanted to get to know him and began to ask him his name. Ian was surprised by this because it couldn't be interesting to anyone, but he still said his name. Such kindness on the part of the fair-haired major could not be expected. He noticed that Ian was a good opponent. He continued to say that he did not expect Ian to win and show such a good result. It was strange for Ian to hear this. The blonde guy began to interrogate Ian how he found this place because it is quite far away and unknown. But Ian just walked and got lost, which is not strange for him. This happens to him quite often. For the fair-haired guy, such an answer was very strange and it was hard to believe. For him, Ian was a very strange guy. But it couldn't be said that the fair-haired guy considered it completely a lie. Everything looked true. The loser was dissatisfied with this outcome and began to say that Ian was not a participant, and the match was essentially invalid. But it was not this that irritated, but the fact that at first he was passive, and then began to act as if he was playing. The opponent has put a lot of effort into training and must win, so he can't just let it go. In a state of anger, he begins to do completely abnormal things. He wanted to destroy Ian, but that was not the case. Revenge could not be realized so quickly. A guy from the audience who was carefully watching does the impossible. He helps Ian, saving him from the hands of revenge, and punishes the scoundrel for his wrong decision. The rescuer warned the attacker because he had several warnings, and he could easily be thrown out. The guy was already talking to the fair-haired guy about the mistake of taking Ian to fight, because everything could not have ended so well. Jan was given a phone number to which messages about fights would be sent, and after each match the phone number would change. The blonde guy assured Ian that he was obliged to participate in the next matches. As soon as the date was known, he would be informed. The blonde guy assured that he would definitely tell about the date of the match if Ian wanted to participate. He gave the phone to Ian and said goodbye, promising to meet at the next match. The guy who liked Ian decided to find out a little information about him. He asked Ian if he was a student, because that would not be very good. But Ian replied that he was a student. The guy continued to learn about the guy's skills in battles. He believed that this was not Ian's first fight, but Ian assured the guy that he had never taken part in matches before, and ended up here purely by chance, having gotten lost. He noticed the guy's good self-control even when he was beaten. Ian held on, endured, and was not afraid. This was due to the fact that he was used to enduring and did not react to it. The guy continued to ask if Ian was a player, but Ian didn't even understand what he meant by the word player. He talked about working for machine operators, but now it was clear that Ian had nothing to do with them. Then he gave very strange advice, not to come to the next match, unless of course Ian wants to die. Ian was shocked and did not understand what this meant, because he was told to come to the next match and nothing was clear. The guy once again said not to come, because many who came for money later realized that it was not worth it at all. He continued to say that if Ian continues, then it will be very difficult for him to leave. This place is like a breeding ground. If Yang is a simple student, then he should not waste time on this, although all people may encounter similar situations. Ian had already begun to say that he would be glad not to interfere in such matters anymore, and he would have already agreed not to come again. In parting, the guy noticed Ian's ingenuity, and the fact that he was great for understanding everything, and did not forget to praise him for a good fight. Everyone left and Ian was left alone with himself and his thoughts. He had a lot of them. Ian was about to leave and try to find a way out, because he had a lot more to do besides what happened to him. He walked and had the feeling that there was some kind of awakening from a dream. It was the first time Ian had a fight with someone, and he couldn't stand to fight back. He earned a lot of money since he had not yet earned money by working every day, but the pain that was felt was proof that this was not a dream at all. He believed that this dream would end quickly. Everything would disappear as if nothing had happened. Ian, as always, will turn off everything around him. He does this throughout his life. Ian entered the store. He was deep in thoughts. The cashier greeted him warmly. The guy didn't answer anything and went where he needed to go. This confused the saleswoman. He took the package of water, paid silently, and still silently left. The cashier was completely surprised. It was clear from her face that she did not understand the situation at all. Jan came home and told his father about this. His appearance was very strange and surprised his father. Father instantly started shouting at Ian. How dare he first go anywhere and then return completely beaten? Without reacting to his father's words, Ian simply gave him the money. He said that he would definitely help him in any way he could. Then he gave him the money he had, and said that the amount together with the card should be enough. He went to his room and just sat on the floor. There were quite a lot of thoughts in his head. He noticed that for the first time in forever the house was completely silent. It was very quiet and very peaceful, which frightened me at the same time, but also made me happy. The silence was broken by the ringing of the alarm clock, which informed me that I needed to get ready for work. It was very strange that Ian went to work. The morning delivery was waiting. After the first part of the working day, Ian went to the university. 2 possible classmates of Yana talked about the obligation to attend these classes. Another of the classmates asked if there was a person here who was not present at the classes. There was such a person, but no one knew anything about him. There was only an empty space on the lists. Those present discussed among themselves who it could be, and the fact that this person was not there. He became more interesting. One of the girls present said that this man was the guy Ian. The attendant began to ask the girl how she knew him. They studied at the same school. Those present said they were supposed to be close, but in reality they were not at all. The girls talked about how they were going to invite him to a senior meeting to get to know each other better. But his classmate said that most likely he would not come. This surprised 2 friends. They did not understand why he might not come. The girl explained that he is just the kind of person who only does what he has planned. It seemed that he was not interested in anything at all. His boss called Ian on the phone. His boss asked if he could talk. Ian was comfortable talking. His boss said that today's work was postponed to tomorrow. Ian did not understand why this happened. All because his car broke down and he won't be able to bring in inventory, so work will continue tomorrow. Yang understood everything. The guy continued to walk along the corridor of the university. In parting, The boss wished him good luck in his studies and said that he was expecting the guy tomorrow. In Boss Hyun's office, his partner was saying that there is no need to give people jobs. As it turned out, the company was suffering losses due to one of the workers who stole money and went missing. But the boss continued to defend Ian. He said that this guy had just begun to live, and there was no need to deceive him. His partner continued to stand his ground, but Hyun ordered him to go and work. Ian canceled what he had planned, and now he has some free time. The first lecture ended right after everyone got introduced, so Ian will just have to go home. The girls noticed the guy and asked if he was really him. One of the girls went to talk to him. A former classmate said that he would not agree to go with them, especially since she had work. Two friends said that she couldn't just leave because they had told the seniors that a very good person would come with them. The girl had to go, and she asked to be told that she would not be there. Another of the girls was offended that she just left, but her friends said that they could relax without her. One of the guys said that he would go to Ian and ask if he could come with them. The guy approached Ian and asked why he had never been with them at meetings. The guy introduced himself to Hans and invited Ian to go with them to a party with senior students. Ian said hello, but said that he didn't really want to go to the party. Hansu asked why this was so. Did he really need to go to work, or did he have something to do? Ian had free time, but he had no desire to get close to others in any way. First of all, Ian had no money. This surprised his new acquaintance. His new friend said that he would give him a discount. Gansu said that he is quite close to the president, so it is not worth telling anyone about it. He continued to encourage Ian to go to the party with him. The girl was at work. They sent her a message that he agreed to go with them. The girl was surprised, because he is not the kind of person who would agree to such events. The whole company went to the cafe. It was clear that Ian was unpleasant to be there. Yang ordered rice. Those present were very surprised. Hansu said that it was he who invited him. Two girls sat down next to Ian and offered him a drink. Seeing the bottle of alcohol, Yang remembered his father. These memories were quite unpleasant for him. He correctly refused, saying that he did not like to drink alcohol. At that moment he wanted to go, thanked for the invitation and said goodbye. Those gathered were surprised and said that they would definitely drink from me. They asked Ian to stay with them a little longer. The girl tried to communicate flirtatiously with Jan, and Hans had to go to another table. The blonde guy opposite was watching Ian and the whole situation very strangely. He took the bottle and began to reproach him for why he had come here at all, because they were going to drink and make new acquaintances. He began to say that Ian couldn't drink, but if he could, let him drink a little with them. Everyone present was shocked by this situation, because if Ian doesn't want to drink, he doesn't need to do it. Ian began to explain that he did not like to drink and did not want to do so. The blonde guy said that didn't mean Ian couldn't drink. In fact, Ian was interested in finding out and trying it out. After a person drinks, he turns into something incomprehensible. After drinking alcohol, a person is unable to remember what he did under its influence. Ian thought that if he drank, he would understand why other people also drink. Ian tasted the alcohol. He really didn't like it, and now the smell coming from his father was the same from him. But that didn't stop him, and he still wanted to know why people drink it. Ian had a desire to know how his father felt while he was beating him. The crowd watched this and thought that the blonde guy was forcing him to drink. Hansu, who was at the next table, saw this situation and was very surprised. The blonde guy was already completely drunk, and he didn't understand why Ian wasn't like that, because he had drunk enough. Ian drank and nothing changed. He did not understand why this was so. Only unpleasant memories flew through his head. He got up from the table and realized that enough was enough. It was time for him to go. But the blonde guy didn't want that and quickly grabbed his hand. In his state of alcohol, he was already very angry. But Yang did not pay attention to this and ignored him. Looking at the guy's face, he saw his father in him, just as aggressive and angry. This awakened some strange emotions and thoughts in him, and he became completely different. And instantly he grabbed the guy to calm him down. Everyone present watched this and were incredibly shocked by the situation. Despite all this, the blonde boy continued to be aggressive and more than before. He swung at Ian. It was unnecessary. It stirred up incomprehensible emotions in the guy. Ian asked if he really liked beating people. Intoxicated, the blonde guy was embarrassed. While the guy was in thought, Ian did the unexpected. He struck back. Hans, who was very shocked by the situation, ran to the rescue, and Jan had power over the enemy. Pictures of his angry father, who beat him quite often, popped into his head. It all turned out to be a nightmare, and he quickly woke up. Gansu was sitting at his desk. Ian didn't understand what kind of guy was sitting in front of him, and he also didn't understand where he was. The guy tried to recall their first meeting, at the university and the invitation to the park. Perhaps it was because Ian was drinking. Hansu said that he could sleep before going home, and Ian seemed to remember everything. In his head, he remembered the image of him hitting the blonde guy while he was surprised by the question. As Hansu approached, he realized that he needed to get Ian out of here as quickly as possible. Hansu was glad that Yang remembered at least something, and advised him not to worry, because the older student started first. Kansu said that everyone present agreed that the senior student was to blame. Ian sat and listened to all this. Perhaps somewhere in his mind he believed that he was to blame. Opposite him there was a mirror. In it he saw his reflection, and it was somehow so unusual. And now when he looked into it, he saw the reflection of his father with a bottle. How in the blink of an eye he became very ill, from the reflection or from alcohol. Hansu quickly understood everything, and showed John where the toilet was. Hansu felt guilty. He believed that from the very beginning, he should have prevented this when he began to force Ian to drink. Ian said that it was not his fault and asked how long. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. Jan had not slept even for an hour. Hansu told him to go and rest some more. But Yang did not agree. He was going to go saying that he had business. Hansu did not understand this. Kansu asked where he could go on a night like this. Yang replied that he worked in a delivery service. Hans was surprised, because Jan had not rested and was about to go to work. He was worried about his well-being. But everything was fine with Ian. Hansu was surprised by this, because if he were in the guy's place, he would have rested all day. John looked around Hans's room out of the corner of his eye. It was spacious but comfortable. The guy asked if Hansu lived alone. Indeed, he lived alone. With sadness in his voice, Ian asked if it was good to live alone. But Hansu didn't think so, because he had to do all the household chores, so it seemed inconvenient to him. Ian didn't think this was the answer at all, because it was a simple job and better than living with someone. Continuing to get dressed, the guy asked how expensive it is to live alone, without parents. Because everything needs money. Hans's parents paid for him while he was without money. Ian was sad to hear this. He said goodbye to his new acquaintance and left. Gansu looked at the closed door, and was still in awe from his conversation with Yang. Yana's past classmate found out about the fight, and at the party she was very surprised. She was very worried about Ian, and asked if he had any injuries. She was told that Hansu took him, and it was all over. The girl continued to say that the atmosphere at the party was not very good, and therefore they said that it was good that she did not leave. The girl was at a loss, and did not know how to accept this situation. Then the girls continued talking about the lesson, and today the assistant teacher was supposed to teach it. The assistant was a certain senior student, and most likely he would conduct the lesson in the laboratory. What was extraordinary was that this assistant was the one with whom Ian had a fight yesterday. The girls were surprised. They believed that if this was a mandatory activity, then Ian would also be present. Indeed, this turned out to be the case. At the beginning, Ian went into the laboratory. Yang and his opponent from yesterday met. The girls sitting there believed that the situation was very uncomfortable, and perhaps they would start a fight again. The two continued to work. They watched each other quite respectfully. Yang carried out experiments according to the instructions of the lesson, and his opponent was near him all the time. Ian was surprisingly very attentive and did not pay attention to anyone, but simply worked. After quite some time, the class ended and the laboratory was completely empty. Yang completely ignored his opponent, and this made him very angry. He wanted to somehow teach him a lesson. After the lesson, the girls talked about the behavior of the two guys. They noticed Ian's calm attitude towards this. One of the girls suggested going out to eat, but Jan's previous classmate was interested in something. Not far from them, a completely lonely Ian was walking along the corridor, and it was he who attracted the girl's attention. She told her classmates that she wanted to go out to lunch with someone else. Having taken the food, Ian sat all alone. The girl took a portion for herself and went to him. The girl greeted sweetly and thought about how to continue the conversation. The guy didn't understand anything and didn't know how to react to the situation. The girl continued the conversation and said that they had not seen each other for quite some time. This surprised the guy even more. Now he didn't understand what was happening at all. He simply turned away from the girl, but she quickly asked him not to do this. She said that they live in the same house, studied at the same school, and are now studying at the same university. And last year they sat together at the same desk. This surprised the guy even more. He didn't understand who this girl was. The girl didn't understand why he reacted this way, as if he was seeing her for the first time, hearing about it for the first time. Remembering her childhood, she realized that he always looked like he was busy with something else. She talked about their life together, and believed that the guy should know her, because they had met many times. Even if they sat together, it was as if he was in another world, and his gaze was always directed into emptiness. He said that he was seeing the girl for the first time. It was as if he did not want to accept the world, and was always on the sidelines. He could easily be considered a complete outsider. The girl was always interested, but it was as if he was surrounded by a stone wall, and therefore no one could make friends with him. But despite this, he was always there. And this was very surprising because exactly why everything was like that. The girl was no less surprised that Yang always attracted her attention. The girl believed that they were at least friends, but it was quite strange that he did not remember her. Despite the fact that they lived nearby and studied, the girl should not be so happy. It seems the girl was wishful thinking, because Ian didn't remember her at all. She realized that she shouldn't try, and decided to simply leave him, going to another table. Something completely unusual happened here. Yang said that he remembers the girl. She is Lim Si-yoon, his friend. He explained everything else by saying that he simply did not react to the world around him. Even if he meets a person, or some situation happens next to him, he thinks about all this in his head and does not react to it. But he assured the girl that he remembered everything. The girl was shocked and did not know how to react to this because she was waiting for it and it happened. She decided to return to the table and wished him a bon appetit, and he responded in kind. The girl was wondering why he kept looking around, all because he was confused. A basket appeared near the chemistry classroom in which you had to put your laboratory work. People gathered and watched their first scores. Gansu received a very good mark. Next, the girl asked what grade Ian received, but he received a very bad grade. Those present when they saw this were very shocked. It couldn't have happened like that. Si-yoon did the unexpected. She snatched the notebook from Yang and said that she needed it for a minute. The girl came to the teacher and said that everything was fine with this work, so the grade was not deserved. The teacher looked at the work and realized that this was indeed the case, and the grade was given incorrectly. He asked for forgiveness and said that he would correct the rating to the appropriate one at that moment. The girl looked at the teaching assistant present and understood the whole situation. It was clear that he was very angry, because this was not at all part of his plans. Those present were very outraged by the situation and told Ian to be sure to inform them if it happened again. He was surprised and somewhat shocked by this act, but still thanked him for the help. If Ian is grateful, the girl decides to invite him to have lunch together. Everyone was waiting for an answer. Oddly enough, they really wanted Ian to go with them. But Hansu was a little surprised by the girl's pressure. It seemed that she liked Yang, and Hansu asked about it. The girl was very surprised by this question and was not very happy that Hansu wanted to know. The girl's friend decided to support her and tell Ian that this is why he definitely needs to go for a walk with Hana. But Ian quickly refused, saying that he had a job and needed to work. Hana did not lose hope and asked what the guy was doing tomorrow, but he also had work tomorrow. Therefore, the next question was what he was doing the day after tomorrow, but the answer did not change. Hana then decided to meet that week, but he still had work to do. She decided to take over his breaks between work, but he replied that he still had work. So the girl decided to invite the guy to lunch at the university tomorrow. She waited impatiently for an answer and really wanted him to answer like that. Due to a lot of talking, he still agreed to have lunch with her. The girl noticed that they would definitely meet tomorrow. Se-yoon noticed that Hana seemed to really like Yang, but Ian didn't understand at all why he didn't even do anything for her. Se-yoon continued by saying that she likes the way Yang looks, but he didn't understand what the girl meant and asked him what he looked like. The girl replied that he should look in the mirror and see what he looks like. This made the guy think a lot. He began to remember his appearance in the mirror. He was somehow very strange, incomprehensible, as if not from this world. He began to say that sometimes in the mirror, he sees not himself at all but something else. The girl was surprised by this, but also very interested. She asked what he saw, but Ian did not want to continue this. The girl agreed to forget about this conversation and asked about Hana if she was nice to him. Young asked why the girl thought Hana looked amazingly cute. This made Se-yoon somewhat angry, and she asked why he was behaving this way. Was it because he didn't want to conform? They sat in silence because Ian had no answer to the girl's questions. She said that it doesn't matter, because he's simply not interested in all this. But that's because Yang had never thought about it before. He quickly decided to leave, saying that he needed to go to work and said goodbye. The girl watched the guy walking in front. There were a lot of thoughts in her head. The girl emphasized to herself that even though he entered the university, he had not changed at all. At work, Ian was completely different. His behavior was not the same as always. His boss noticed that he was smiling and said that he liked the university. The guy was going home, but not for long, just to have a snack and then to a new job. He walked and thought about today. Everything was as usual, but for some reason Ian was in a good mood. He felt like he was finally living a normal life. Finally, he went home and reported it. But that was the end of normal life. There were again people in the room to whom the guy's father was guilty of money. He was shocked to see them here, but even more frightened by the sight of his father. Recently they gave away all the money, so he didn't understand why these people came again. But the leader of this gang was surprised when he heard about the money. It seems there was something wrong here. They started asking Father Ian about the money, but it turns out no one received any money. Yang announced the amount. It was about 16 million won. Those present were surprised, and Ian's father simply remained silent, without saying a single word. It was clear from the receipts that the money had been withdrawn from the card, and it seems that it was not used for its intended purpose. And the father lost everything. The main one said that one must be a big fool, hoping to pay off the debt through gambling. This made him very angry, and he informed him that they would have to meet for a long time if someone did not wise up. Ian stood and watched this whole picture. There was nothing new. Everything was repeated. Ian understood that before experiencing cherished feelings, hope or happiness, he definitely needs to prepare for complete despair in this life. Ian looked at all this with complete calm, but his soul was screaming just one question: when will it all end? He was able to endure everything and move forward. Despite this, Ian continued to rise to the top. But once at the goal, disappointment awaited because there was nothing at the top. At that moment, a notification arrived on the phone about the location of the fight club. Ian began to remember all the events from his first fight, the promise of a lot of money, bets, everything. And he decided to do the impossible for himself. Ian didn't want to deal with this anymore, but there was no way out. Ian arrived and found the match in the midst of all the action. Yang said that he came here to take part in the battles. The mast was in full swing. The guys were fighting. Bets were being made. The blonde guy was waiting for Ian very much. He hoped that he was just late. His partner replied that he did not hope in vain, because Ian would not come. The blonde guy replied that he couldn't know for sure. He could appear at that moment. And then a guy entered the room, but it was not yet clear whether it was definitely Ian. A very strange guy came. The first word he said upon entering was, "Found." Everyone present turned to look at him. Some were shocked, and some did not understand anything at all. The blonde guy's partner got a little angry at the sight of him coming in, and immediately asked what he was doing here. The guy replied that he came to participate in the battle, because this place was just for them. The partner replied that earlier he told this guy not to come to fights anymore because of a mistake. But the new fighter replied that there was no point in dwelling on the past. He thought about this quite a lot last year. But the partner did not want to let the guy in and asked him to leave. The new fighter began shouting to the crowd that because of this, they would miss his fight. He continued to say that without his presence, these would not be fights, but simply showdowns on the playground. Those present were shocked by this statement and looked at the fighter with curiosity and fear. Then he picked up his small suitcase and said that there was a gift for everyone. He sharply opened the suitcase and a lot of money fell out. He said that this was the first bet to start the fight. All those present were shocked by such actions and were completely bombarded with money. In front of a large amount of money, those gathered began to ask for a chance, begging them to find an opponent for him. The blonde guy's partner watched all this misunderstanding and didn't know how to react. The new fighter began shouting with thirst for people to come out to him to fight. The guy who had previously been Yang's opponent apparently wanted to join the fight. But his partner said that he was not a fighter at all, and it was not worth engaging in battle with him. From the very beginning, he came here not for the money, but to hurt someone. These words confused the guy a little, and he fell into thought. Then his embarrassment changed into some kind of curiosity. He looked at the new fighter and thought about what he should do. He began to regain consciousness, but did not take his eyes off the new fighter. Here the fighter does the completely unexpected. He gives in to the guy with great desire. He swoops down on him with an indescribable thirst to engage in battle. He starts the fight, and for those present it seems like a very fun game. The blonde guy's partner doesn't like this at all, and screams at him to stop it. The blonde guy began to stop him, paying attention to the whole situation. Those present loved it incredibly. If their partner stopped their fight, then only he would be to blame. The partner stopped, but the fight continued. The new fighter was too cruel. Without a drop of pity, he beat his opponent with considerable cruelty. He enjoyed it very much, and his opponent was almost destroyed. At this moment, a completely unexpected person enters the room and attracts attention. Even the new cruel fighter was surprised, and even stopped for a moment, wanting to see who came there. And now standing at the door is Jan, the one who was so expected. He came to take part in the battle. Those present began talking among themselves who this guy was. Some said that they had seen him at the last match. The blonde guy was very happy to see Ian, and greeted him with all joy. Those present began to clarify among themselves that this was really the same Ian from the last match. The blonde guy began to introduce Ian, saying that this was indeed the player from the last match, and he was very impressive. The partner was angry when he saw Ian, because last time he tried to explain everything to him, and he agreed not to participate. The new fighter was very surprised by the words that Ian was impressive. These words were very interesting and fueled interest. The new fighter was finishing up with his opponent. The blonde guy along with Ian watched this. And then, in one surprisingly cruel moment, the body of the new fighter's attacker flies directly to Ian's feet. Ian watched this in horror. but as always he did not express any emotions. The new fighter was eager for a new fight. He stood up with cruelty and said that he wanted a second round. Those present began to shout loudly, and everything was heading towards the fact that Yang and the new fighter would end up in the second round. The eyes of the red-haired guy were filled with great thirst. This is exactly what he was really looking forward to. He had that same pleasant feeling. He felt pleasure from beating people. Only in these moments did he experience real, true pleasure that he so needed. Each time, he had a tremendous thirst to experience even more. The craving for this grew very quickly. The guy with red hair leaned towards Ian, intent on enjoying this new round. He told Ian that it would be terribly painful, but this definitely didn't scare Ian. And the guy with red hair began to act, because he no longer had any patience. His eyes were filled with desire, and a great thirst for fight. He could not cope with this desire. He looked at him and waited for him to begin to writhe in pain. Yang looked at the red-haired guy with complete indifference, and as always, empty in his eyes. The guy with red hair was completely bewildered and didn't understand why Ian didn't react. And Yang does something that surprises both his opponent and everyone present. He struck back at the enemy. Yan's opponent flies away from his blow. Those present are very impressed by this. Everyone really likes it. The guy with red hair is shocked by this turn. He clearly did not expect that he would suffer and not others. But this did not frighten him, but even fueled his interest and thirst for the upcoming battle. The guy with red hair attacked Ian, wanting to completely destroy him. He leaned towards Ian again, wanting to repeat everything again and see the desired reaction. The guy with red hair hit Ian with all the strength and cruelty he had. He hoped that this time Yang would definitely suffer from pain, from strong blows, but Ian didn't react at all, and just stood there in bewilderment as to what he wanted to do with this. The guy with red hair was very surprised, because he didn't understand how he could withstand such pain. And while he stood in shock, not understanding anything, Yang struck. Only the guy with red hair suffered. He was thrown back heavily by Ian's blow. His partner watched all this, and didn't understand why Ian didn't even flinch in pain. The guy with red hair was getting more and more angry, but despite this he was also in pain. He was very angry and started shouting why Ian didn't feel pain, and what was going on here. Ian stood very calm. He, as always, experienced everything within himself, and his empty gaze was always with him. In his thoughts he began to reflect on the fact that something was clearly wrong here. After all, before the pain was weak for him, but now he doesn't feel anything at all. He thought about the fact that his feelings had never disappeared like this before. Ian didn't understand why this happened. The guy with red hair was very angry, and again he headed towards Ian, but he was calm. Now he wondered how long he could endure this pain, and he beat again and again, trying to do it even more forcefully. Young continued to calmly accept all this. His body did not react and did not feel anything. The guy with red hair said that the third time he wouldn't let Yang get to him. And against the backdrop of anger, in a cruel impulse he strikes again, with the desire to destroy. He was not going to stop for a moment. He beat him very hard and brutally. A large number of brutal blows. Yang seemed to be covering himself a little. But this was not at all necessary. Surprisingly, those present shouted a lot. This is exactly the kind of fun they liked. An incredibly large number of blows. Any other opponent would not have endured this. The guy with red hair got excited, but this was completely incomprehensible to Ian. He was interested in something else. At one moment there is simply a fatal blow that will further change the course of the situation. It was as if something had happened to Ian. Had he really begun to react to blows and receive pain from them? Some kind of cloudiness occurs, or some kind of dizziness, something very incomprehensible. Ian seems to want to fall from pain, but the guy with red hair prevents him from doing so. Everyone was already starting to think that Yang was completely powerless. The enemy thought that he would hold out much longer. But Ian was not going to give up. Something completely incomprehensible was just happening to him. The blonde guy and his partner began to think that Ian was not a strong player at all. And just a moment later, it all became very boring for those present. The guy with red hair discards it as an unnecessary amusement. It was as if Yang had already overcome an opponent. He had almost given up, but there was something wrong. The guy seemed to have already been destroyed, but he attracted attention with some incomprehensible appearance. The guy with red hair looked at Ian and didn't understand why he didn't fall down like a loser. He furiously decided to attack the guy again, but it seems that Yang got ahead of him and began to fight. The guy with red hair was very shocked. Yang continued to strike back, with no less ferocity than his opponent. His opponent suffered greatly from him. It was as if someone had possessed Ian. He didn't even think about stopping, but continued to fight. The guy with red hair flew away. Those present began to like it again. They were waiting for this. Young's opponent did not understand such actions at all. He was just beginning to suffer defeat. He didn't understand what was wrong with Ian and why he was acting this way. If this continued, the guy would not be able to restrain himself. Young continued to defend himself, and the guy with red hair thought that he still needed to restrain himself. But it is unlikely that he would have succeeded, and he went at Ian with rage. It has an incomprehensible and cruel effect, but no one is trying to stop this whole situation. The guy with red hair said that Yang would no longer be able to lose consciousness. Everything was getting closer to the impossible. The guy with red hair was going to kill Ian. He had already done this to his opponent once, but he doesn't act right away. He was waiting for Ian's reaction to this and his actions. Not getting what he wanted, he decided to finally end it. The moment he thought, he immediately began his cruel actions. This is exactly what he wanted. This brought him delight and an indescribable desire. This is the feeling he wanted to get so badly. But not everything happens so easily. The blonde guy's partner comes up and decides to intervene. He rejects the guy with red hair from Ian, preventing him from ending his life. Seeing the whole situation, he realized that the guy with red hair wanted to kill someone again. The guy with red hair actually agreed that if it weren't for his partner, he would have killed Ian. Young looked at his opponent. Despite the whole situation, he still remained very calm. And the guy with red hair was very surprised, because Ian was still standing as if unharmed. His partner decided to finish everything by taking Ian, and told those present to take their bets. Everyone was at a loss what was happening. They believed that their partner was absolutely no one to decide this. The guy with red hair was simply left in the hall, completely shocked by the misunderstanding of what had happened. My head began to replay all the moments of the fight, especially how Yang leaned towards him. This created some strange emotions for him, but he definitely liked it very much. The guy with red hair knew that he really wanted this, and now he wanted even more. Next, Ian had a very serious conversation with his partner, a blonde guy. The partner was asking why Ian had come, because last time he said that he understood everything and did not want to get involved in this. At first Ian didn't want to, but then, with sadness in his voice, he admitted that he really needed money. This seemed to be understandable to his partner, but at the same time he felt disappointed. He felt sorry for the guy, and he pulled out the money and gave it to him, telling him not to come back here again. But Ian didn't want to take the money, and gave him his phone number, telling him to tell him where the next match would be. It was clear that this made his partner very angry. He did not understand why Ian was doing this. He instantly, with great rage, pinned the guy against the wall, believing that this would have an impact. He told him that it was quite dangerous, and reminded him of the situation that had just happened, how he almost died. But Ian, calm as always, answered with extraordinary indifference that it didn't matter to him at all. Ian sadly began to remember all the moments, and replied that he never felt alive. The partner did not know what to answer, because such words confused him very much. A blonde guy came into the room and said that Ian's opponent today was a very bad player. He gave him a new phone and money for participation, saying that he should definitely go to the next match and earn more. Since he had no choice at all, he of course agreed. Their partner left them. He was very angry and disappointed. He started shouting that Ian was like everyone else. They come here and then they go completely crippled. And in parting, he said that at the end of all this, Ian should not think about pity. The blonde guy told Ian not to pay attention to him, because he always says that. He also said that his partner had been here the longest. Ian wondered how much he earned. The blonde guy was somewhat confused by this. He did not understand the question, and asked again what exactly Ian wanted to know. He was wondering how much overall he could earn by coming here every time. He thought about it, and replied that if Ian takes part in many matches, thereby making a name for himself, then he shouldn't worry about money. Having learned about this, Ian became interested in when he would be able to take part in the big match. The blonde guy was somewhat surprised by the question about such a rapid course of events. He replied that first Ian needs to make sure that he will be at the next match, and then we will see. Here he ended the conversation by saying goodbye, and saying that he would definitely be waiting for him. Ian looked after him sadly, his gaze as empty as always, and his head filled with surprisingly many thoughts. He didn't hold much money in his hands, but it was at least some money. It wasn't superfluous. Then Ian and his boss were driving to a new job. He asked why the guy works quite a lot. He said that he knew about his work in the morning in the delivery service. He was wondering why Ian would work so much. After all, everyone had reasons for this, and the boss was interested in what Yang's reason was. The guy listened to all this and didn't know what to answer. It seemed to drive him into a dead end. Ian did not answer anything, and after a while he returned home, all sad and disappointed. He left with inexpressible sadness, but not long ago his life was full of joy. Instantly he felt bad. Had his endurance and patience come to an end? Everything that happened pointed to problems. This is not good. He recalled a conversation with his boss, and he said that it is very good if he works and endures all the difficulties of life. But if you keep everything inside for a very long time, at some point you can break down very badly. This can happen even if you do not feel physical or mental pain. Everything tends to accumulate. The guy has already returned home. His appearance screamed that he had no strength at all, and his entire body was completely exhausted. Very soon he had to go to work, but his body was not able to. Everything was blurry in his eyes. In complete misunderstanding and disappointment, the guy fell to the floor unconscious. He should already be at work, his employer shouted, asking why the man was missing. Ian's work partner reported that Ian did not come. The boss was surprised by such a request. The boss ordered that Ian be contacted and told to be at his workplace immediately. He told his partner to work instead of him for now, but this was too much for the guy and he refused. Ian had to do more work than an ordinary person, which frightened him and surprised his boss. His partner continued to say that Ian worked harder than others and did it all like a robot. The partner asked the boss not to punish Ian, but simply to look after him. He was also the youngest of all. At the university, Hana was very worried about Young's absence. Because they were going to have lunch, Hansu said that he was now at work. Hana asked what kind of work this was. Maybe he got hurt doing it. And Hansu noticed that he didn't even have his phone number. She behaved very childishly, shouted whether anyone knew Jan's phone number. Hana was very worried. Si-eun was walking home after university. She was calm, but there were a lot of thoughts in her head. The girl was thinking about what could happen to Ian, because she had not been to a single lesson since the morning. She walked, and there were only more thoughts in her head, and something had to be done about it. The girl remembered Hana, and she had no words to express because she behaved completely abnormally. Si-eun lived next to Yang. The girl thought that she could go to him and visit him for a minute. But at the same time, the girl thought that this would be quite strange, and it was better for her to just go home. Si-eun saw the open door to Yang's apartment and puddles of ketchup on the floor. This really scared her. The girl did not immediately realize that there were drops of blood on the floor. Later she realized that it was she who was there. This scared her very much and confused her. She thought about how she should act. Without thinking, she quickly ran downstairs to help as quickly as possible. Entering the room, she saw a completely unpleasant picture, which frightened her very much. Yang was lying on the floor in front of her. She asked if he was okay, but the answer was unlikely. She started telling him to get up, and the girl quickly wanted to get rid of the shock. The girl called for help. People asked how long he had been in this state, but she did not know. The doctors were shocked to learn that in this condition he could breathe. They said that Ian suffered greatly from pain. The doctors did everything that was required of them. Later, he was in a simple ward, where Si-eun was next to him. Ian was still in the hospital, and had not yet passed into himself. Lying in bed listening to the birds singing, the guy gradually began to come to his senses. When he finally woke up, he was very surprised, because he had no idea where he was now. He began to get out of bed to understand at least something. Any movement brought him discomfort in his body, but what he saw next surprised him even more. Si-eun was next to him. He was very surprised that this particular girl was nearby, and it seemed she spent the whole night next to him. She was somewhat indignant, but asked if everything was okay with him, and said that the doctors said that he could not move yet. He tried to understand everything that was said. They looked at each other, each in their own thoughts. But then Ian asked completely incomprehensibly. He didn't know who this girl next to him was. He asked who she was, and this question caused a great stupor for both of them. The girl was very indignant, and reminded him that he was the same when they had dinner together for the first time. Such a joke was inappropriate for her. And then he realized that it was Si-eun. She said that the guy was literally fighting for his life. She told him that she was very shocked to find him in such a state. The girl did not understand what had happened to him. Ian began to remember, and all he remembered was how he lost consciousness. The girl said that it was because of his loss of consciousness that he was here. Ian noticed that perhaps this was all due to the heavy workload. But then the girl was interested in why his family was not at home, so that someone could help. Ian said with sadness in his voice that he lives with his father, and he does not often appear at home. The guy quickly asked the time. He had to go to the university. The girl was outraged by such actions and said that he was released for the duration of treatment. She asked for his number so she could give him homework, but he also needed to work. This angered the girl even more. She did not understand why Ian did not accept the doctor's instructions. The girl had to go to school. She said that she would definitely inform the doctor that the guy woke up. She also promised that maybe next time she would bring their friends, but he asked not to tell anyone. He wanted only her to know about his hospitalization. She was surprised at first, but then she accepted it all. If he decided so, then she would understand. The girl had to go to class, and she said goodbye to Ian. She said that if there was any news at the university, she would definitely tell him. Young good-naturedly thanked the girl for this, which somewhat pleasantly embarrassed her. He said out loud that this girl was with him all the time. This opinion made him feel good. The girl said that Ian not only processes all the information in my head, but also knows how to express it quite well. Now she was really getting ready to leave and said goodbye. When the girl left, Ian sat and still did not fully understand everything. At one of his jobs, namely in the delivery service, work was in full swing, but without him. The boss approached Ian's partner and asked why they had not yet contacted the student who works here. The partner said that he could not contact him for 2 weeks, but when he appeared, he definitely needed to keep an eye on him. The boss at his other job also didn't understand where Ian had gone. He also needed him at his workplace. He called Ian and noted that it had been quite a while, referring to their conversation. Young said that for some time he would not be able to go to work, for his personal reasons. He asked for an apology for this. The boss replied that everything was fine. He understood that something had happened, and asked when Ian would be able to go to work. Young said that he would not be able to return to work for a long time, and due to his situation, asked for an apology for this. The boss replied that he should not worry about this, and he understood everything and wished for a speedy resolution of the matter. Finally, the boss wished him not to suffer defeat in different situations, and to take care of his health. Ian was very glad that the boss understood him, and finally sincerely thanked him for this. He said goodbye to his boss, and was sitting alone in the room when his phone screen lit up. It was a message about the location of the next fight match. Without thinking a minute later, Ian got ready, and went exactly there. After some time, Seyoon came to him, and of course, she did not find Yang in place, which surprised her very much. She asked the nurse if she happened to know where the guy who was vacationing here went. The nurse said that quite a long time had passed since Yang left the hospital. The girl was outraged why Ian went to inform anyone about this. Fans were gradually gathering at the new location of the match to watch the fun. Ian was already there, and the blonde guy asked how he was feeling and whether he was ready for his first official match. The blonde guy said that Ian's previous opponent would not be allowed to fight yet, and he would not see him in the near future. Yang said that from now on he will participate in all fights constantly. And then it all began. Those gathered made bets, and the fighters played the match. At this time his university friends were having fun together. Hansu asked if anyone knew about Yang. Seyoon did not say anything about him. Hana said that she missed him very much. But Gansu quickly changed the subject and suggested trying the new food that had recently been delivered to them. While his friends were having fun, Ian took part in the battles. His classmates recently went to a competition, and the winning team will definitely receive a prize. At this time, he won victories in battles. Everyone considered him crazy, because it was simply impossible to survive. Ian's friends were going to go to the second round of the game, because they really liked it. At this time, many people became interested in Ian, and placed all their bets only on him. He won many victories, and took the money that was so needed for it. Money and new messages about the location of matches, that's all that was in his unbearable life. His body was extremely disfigured and completely exhausted, but he was not going to stop. As he looked at his reflections, a blonde guy came to him with his partner. The blonde guy recalled that last time Yang wanted to take part in big matches. He scoffed somewhat, saying that Yang was skilled enough to participate in these small matches. Next, he drew attention to his partner. He did not participate in small matches due to the fact that there was no opponent for him. The blonde guy suggested that Ian go with them to win many victories in big matches. Ian looked at himself almost destroyed, and did not know how to respond to such a proposal. Without any words, he followed the blonde guy, thereby showing his agreement. The fair-haired guy's partner didn't like this at all, but through his strength he tried to accept it all. The room they had recently been in remained empty, but it still contained the sadness and rage that had previously been present here. The arena was preparing for a new big match, with great opportunities and bad cases. The arena was washed out of blood. One of the fighters said that this should be done quickly in order to start a new match. A blonde guy, his partner, and Ian came to the wound. His partner made a comment about why the losing guy had not yet been removed. The blonde guy started saying that the new match place is different because there are managers here. The blonde guy said that he and Ian would be in the hall, and his partner would enter the battle. The partner positively agreed with the words of the fair-haired guy. The blonde guy suggested sitting somewhere in the back so as not to attract attention to himself. The people sitting nearby could not help but pay attention to Ian, who was very disfigured. Some guy turned to his partner named Park Won-chul. He asked with interest whether he was well prepared for the battle. His partner's opponent challenged him to a fight, threatening that he would destroy him. But Won-chul left there without saying a single word to his future opponent. The future enemy began to talk about some debts to a bad person. Then he started talking about some deceased friend and asked Won-chul if he would lend him money. He remembered his dead friend Won-chul, who had a really hard time and committed suicide, and just called him names. Finally, he said that it would be much better if Won-chul got sick and then died. But Won-chul did not react to his words at all, and continued to walk in his direction. The enemy didn't like him very much. After Won-chul, he told you to quickly change your clothes and hurry to the ring. Young asked for what purpose Won-chul takes part in battles, because you can't tell from him that he wants to do this. The blonde guy explained that no one here likes to fight, everyone comes to make money. The blonde guy started talking about Wonchul's friend, who he had been friends with for 30 years. Wonchul kept it a secret from everyone. But because of his love for medicine, his friend suffered a heart attack. He was sent to intensive care, but his condition was very serious. When the blonde guy was at one of the fights, then this happened. The blonde guy then met Park Wonchul for the first time. He came with a phone where messages about the location of matches were sent. This phone belonged to his friend. Wonchul asked for money for treatment. They made a deal beneficial for both. But unfortunately, his friend underwent 3 severe heart surgeries and now lies connected to an artificial respiration apparatus. Therefore, the treatment fees have become high enough that Wonchul cannot pay everything back at once. His friend seemed to know everything about this and committed the irreparable, committing suicide. The blonde guy thought that after this Wonchul would disappear, but he said that he would definitely repay the debt. The blonde guy said that he didn't belong here at all, because he was very good and had many weaknesses. After these words, Yang began to remember all the moments with Wonchul, and it seems he began to understand. Really thinking about it, he finally understood why he drove him away from this place. Wonchul's opponent mocked him very loudly, saying that he was replacing his dead friend. Next, he tried to appeal to him, telling his friend to think when he sees him here in the arena. He closed his eyes and apologized for waking up talking about a good life, and told him not to be like him. He remembered his friend who spoke about victory. You need to win no matter what. And at that moment the battle began. Wonchul's opponent was incredibly furious and thirsty for battle. He flew at Wonchul with the desire to destroy, but it was unlikely that Wonchul would give in so easily. Wonchul dealt brutal blows to his opponent without sparing him. Everything coincided to the point that his opponent suffered a great defeat, suffering from the man's rage. But he got up, very angry, and wanted to destroy his attacker, because he did not want to tolerate this. He wanted to fly at Wonchul, with incredibly great strength and rage filling his body. But Wonchul did not want to allow this at all, and confronted his opponent. With each new blow, his opponent flew away, defeated and exhausted. And it was precisely in those moments when the enemy was almost overcome that he struck unexpected blows, completely destroying the enemy, without a chance for violent revenge. The enemy was completely under Wonchul's control, and at this time, he was wondering if he was really suffering from him. The pain that the enemy experienced was similar to that of someone throwing something very heavy at him, such as stones. And now he was not as brave as at the beginning of the battle, and shouted what he seemed to be asking for mercy. The blonde guy said that in such matches there is no possibility of giving up. Managers only stop the fight when there is a threat of death. But Ian thought it was quite risky, and it surprised him. This is how the managers planned it from the very beginning for more excitement. This way you can win more money. Wonchul was merciless and destroyed his opponent with all his might. Despite the whole story, the fair-haired guy still considered Wonchul not a very smart person. Wonchul was still in the arena. Ignoring his opponent's plea to stop, the man continued the fight. Those present really enjoyed this game, but Wonchul's opponent was not as happy as before. But something unusual happened. Wonchul stopped, begging his opponent. It was not according to the rules, but the guy was grateful. But after a second, one can understand that all the good intentions on both sides were just stupid lies, and the enemy attacks Wonchul. He begins to kill Wonchul with all his strength and cruelty, because he made him very angry, and he did not want to give up. His opponent fully showed his true colors, saying that Wonchul is very naive and will now suffer from this. Wonchul received blow after blow, but it cannot be said that he was so easy to destroy. Watching the fight, the blonde guy continued his words. Despite Wonchul's stupidity, he was not a weak fighter. And Wonchul confirmed these words with the following strong actions towards the enemy. This is exactly what Wonchul wanted. A fraction of a second can quickly change actions and the entire situation. The enemy was destroyed. This is exactly what all the spectators were waiting for. And Wonchul's skill surprised and added admiration. Hyung looked at this ending with impression. He noticed that Wonchul is a very strong player, and his final blow was very surprising. As soon as the fight was over, some guy came up to the blonde guy and gave him money. The blonde guy was happy about it. Ian looked at this money. This something confused him, because he did not understand what it was for. The guy continued to look at the money. It was clear that there was quite a large amount there. The sight of this money prompted the guy to think that he should find a way to win several times in matches, and then everything would be fine. Ian laid out the money on the table. That's all he was able to earn during this time. All this money was for the man who was owed by the guy's father. That man was glad that the debts were being paid off. Soon they would not exist at all. But this man was wondering where Ian gets the money from, because last time his father lost as much as 16 million. Ian's answer was very simple and clear. He said that it just works. It cannot be said that it was a lie. The person with whom the dialogue was conducted repeated Ian's words with great interest. He was very curious. He looked carefully at Ian and his very fresh wounds on his face, and realized that something was clearly wrong here. Ian was about to leave. He would pay off his debts anyway. The guy promised to come back again. The man was very interested in Ian's words. He was very curious where he would get more money next time. But Ian only clarified that he would return everything soon, and asked that these people no longer come to his home. These words were farewell, and Ian headed towards the exit, and this man followed him with his gaze. John seemed very interesting to him, but he was even more interested in where he gets the money. He didn't really believe the excuse about work. Out of great curiosity, this man ordered his partner to check on Ian, wanting to know more information about him. The money that Yang brought to pay off the debt did not seem clean to this person. If this is indeed true, there is an opportunity to get a lot more money, and it is better to do it now. While this money-hungry man had such thoughts about Ian, he just wanted to leave quickly. While Yang was working with the first aid kit, the blonde guy reminded him of the guy Wan Chul was fighting with. Ian replayed all the moments of that match in his head. Of course he remembered it. The blonde guy said that the guy who lost would be Ian's first opponent in the big match. Most likely, that guy chose a much weaker opponent for himself, and considered Ian this way because he was new to big matches. Due to the fact that he was a popular athlete, this was not the best first fight for Ian, but they could be brought together at the guy's request. The blonde guy said that if you win this match, you will be paid with a very large sum of money. This is what Ian needed. The blonde guy asked if Ian was ready to take part in this particular fight. Without any hesitation, Ian agreed, saying that he would definitely do it. The blonde boy warned that he was quite strong, but could not show how much due to Wan Chul's power over him. This guy was a professional fighter, perhaps arrogant, but one of the best fighters in the arena. The blonde guy advised me to work with Wan Chul because he had been here long enough and had encountered all the fighters in the big arena. But Yang remembered Wan Chul's words that Yang was like all the fools that are here and didn't know whether it was really necessary to contact him. Ian walked along the road completely in his thoughts, but in no way showing everything out. Despite everything, Yang still decided to talk to Wan Chul. He approached him and asked for advice. Wan Chul was at a loss and did not understand what kind of nonsense Yang was now talking about standing in front of him. Yang continued speaking, asking for advice on how to defeat his future opponent. Wan Chul began to explain that Yang, who was a nobody, could not, with one piece of advice, defeat a person who had been doing this all his life. Wan Chul was angry because Yang ignored his request, and now he dared to ask for advice. Wan Chul did not want to help Yang. He was angry and he didn't care about this boy. Ian was very upset about this. He knew what he was doing was wrong, but there was no other choice. A very important day arrived, namely the day of the match. A lot in Ian's life depended on it. A guy with red hair, Jan's former opponent, was looking for him. It was not clear why he needed this. He looked for him, taking part in various battles, and it was on this day that he came out just like that. The guy with red hair remembered the blonde guy and realized that he had deceived him. The blonde guy gave him a new phone number with the location of the next match and said that Ian would be there too. But to meet Ian, he had to be there on time. When they arrived at the indicated place and did not see anyone around, he checked with the address whether this was really the indicated place. Further remembering the blonde guy, he began to understand what was going on and why no one was there. It's very simple. The fair-haired guy deceived him as if playing some kind of game. The guy with red hair was very angry about this. Every cell of his body was imbued with the desire for revenge. This is because he was not at all the type of person who finishes what he started halfway through. With all his body, he wanted to find Ian and finally deal with him completely. Suddenly, another guy came out of the room and asked not to dirty the wall. He continued to say that everything in the house is beautiful and clean enough to make the walls dirty through stupidity. The guy with red hair was surprised to see him. It was Sung-jo. The guy was wondering why Sung-jo was not in the office. Sung-jo was heading to the office now, which meant that the guy with red hair would not be able to go to the match with him. But Sung-jo recalled that the guy was disqualified because he almost killed his opponent. The guy with red hair didn't understand, if Sung-jo wasn't so interested, why he kept going there. Sung-jo explained that there was a guy at the match that he wanted to know more about. The guy with red hair looked at Sung-jo in surprise and asked if he was also interested in who. He replied that for the last time he watched the guy sitting next to him. He began to remember this moment and said that during the brawl, the bodies of the spectators tensed. This is indeed the case, and this can be understood from the expression of their faces and the behavior of their bodies. This is because they can experience the same pain, even if they are just watching the match. The guy who was being watched did not react at all, and looked like a dead machine. But the most interesting thing for Seong-jo was that this young man continued to react to money. While talking about this, Sunjo seemed to mock him, saying that it looked very cute. Therefore, it was after such observations that he was very interested in learning more. Songjo believed that this guy had already become someone's toy, but he said that if he liked this guy, he would take him for himself. The guy with red hair said that his find was much more interesting, and he would soon go searching. Seongjo had no objections to this, and only wished him success in his search. Sungjo was driving one of his cars, and had a lot of thoughts in his head. He was wondering which side his observation object would now show. But there were also creditor people here. They were going to take money from Ian as soon as he went outside with them. And in the room itself, preparations for the battle were in full swing. The blonde guy told him to let him know when he was ready. And Ian was already ready. Perhaps with a little more fear and worry, but ready. Everyone headed to the cashier to place their bets. The blonde guy made a bet of a fairly large amount of money. The guy at the cash register asked if they brought Ian. They would bet on him. But the fair-haired guy was betting on Yang's opponent, which confused Wanchul. Wanchul asked why he doesn't bet on Yang, because he has never lost. He agreed with this, but said that now he would face a much stronger enemy. The blonde guy then looked at Wanchul in surprise, and asked if he really thought Yang would win. He gave a positive answer, and added that he has many skills that will definitely not be superfluous. But then he remembered their situation on the street, when Wanchul said that he didn't care what happened to Yang. Wanchul then simply walked away angry and indignant, and Yang remained standing there disappointed. He said that he came here in order to live, and he could not escape from here. Wanchul did not understand such words. It interested him and gave rise to many thoughts. Ian continued to say that this fight was the only way out for him. He grew up learning to endure difficulties and not run away from them. Now he was finally saying that he would withstand these fights with patience. And now his opponent is already standing in the arena, behaving defiantly as always, and those present are shouting to start the fight. He shouted asking those present if they were ready to see him destroy his opponent, that is Ian. Wanchul and the blonde guy sat watching this. It was starting very soon. Songjo entered the hall, looking to see if they had started yet, because he was a little late. Yang's opponent began to shout that today he would make very good money. When Wanchul finally agreed to talk to Yang, he asked how long he could hold out like in the previous fight. Yang asked in surprise whether his restraint really meant Wanchul. Wanchul was referring to the incredible attack within 1 minute. He asked if Yang could repeat it. If you think about it logically, then such a plan has no hope of winning, but still. Wanchul explained that after seeing everything, he realized that it was an attack without common sense. Wanchul asked Yang if he could hold his opponent like this throughout the match. Yang's opponent came up and said that no one wanted to fight him because they were afraid. But he was lucky enough to stumble upon someone like Yang. Yang's attack may have lacked power, but it didn't give him any time to think about it. Wanchul said that everything will be under control until Yang allows the enemy to strike back. Yang wants to finish the match as soon as possible, gathering all his possible strength. But the most important advice was that Ian should always be alert and very attentive. Yang needed to make his opponent think that he could launch an attack. And all this needs to be done as quickly as possible. Wanchul watched this entire match with some trepidation. The hairy guy watched everything quite calmly, hoping today to receive money for the victory of Ian's opponent in the match. And the third main spectator was Seongjo, who came here to get to know his object of observation more. Ian was fully prepared to win, even though it would be difficult. And now the moment of truth begins, when John, with complete determination, needs to act without hesitation. He begins his brutal and merciless attack aimed at his opponent. He began to attack, and his opponent considered it all very childish games. The guy continued to attack without any hesitation, and with unspeakable strength. The enemy began to suffer from Yang's rather good attack. Yang followed Wanchul's advice, and this attack was as fast as possible. Yan's opponent shouted that a bad fighter could withstand love. The opponent said that he felt nothing at all. Ian needed to gather all his strength and give it his all in this match. Ian's opponent, of course, received brutal blows from him, but he had to try to destroy his opponent in this match. Just like that, Yang wanted to throw a kick, but this was a good opportunity for his opponent to take matters into his own hands. Seeing this, Yang immediately remembered Wanchul's words to never give his opponent the opportunity to attack him. Yang quickly came to his senses and made a good blow, allowing him to be attacked. And so that his opponent could not react in any way, he quickly dealt him a strong blow. The main rule is to never stop and continue attacking towards the enemy. Fight until the very end, without stopping for a minute. All the spectators were amazed by such an excellent Yang. They were surprised where he got so much strength. Wanchul watched Yang's actions with pleasure, and the fair-haired guy was surprised because he did not expect this. Wanchul agreed that Yang had grown up, but all his victories before were barely achieved. Wanchul believed that Yang did this on purpose, completely exhausting himself. It was as if Yang was stretching out the fight to find out his opponent's abilities. Now he will not tolerate this is exactly what he grew up with, continuing to destroy. Yang mercilessly continued to destroy, not giving him a chance to attack. He needed to finish the match quickly. His opponent was very angry and called Ian a small mosquito. And now Yang's opponent had the opportunity to start attacking him. And that's when the enemy approached Yan to grab him and start the battle from himself. Watching this, many might think that now Ian's era will end and he will suffer. But no, this could not be the case. Yang made an excellent blow and did not allow the enemy to get the better of him. His opponent was almost destroyed, and he did not understand at all how Yang was able to deceive his opponent like that. And then Yang delivers one of the last blows, while the enemy was at a loss as to how it all happened. Yang continued to destroy his opponent without stopping. The end was near. Yang was like an already professional fighter that others could not resist. After another blow from Ian, his opponent fell to the floor with a roar. And now there were split seconds left for Ian to make his final blow, and the match would end with his wonderful victory. But realizing this, his opponent was miraculously able to avoid this blow. Trying to get up, Yan's opponent realized that he had taken too much damage and was now almost exhausted. He didn't understand anything, because it couldn't be that the enemy was so exhausted and exhausted so quickly. And looking at Ian, he realized that he still had a lot of strength, and yet the enemy had never hit him. The enemy began to ask Ian to stop. Fear and desire for mercy were visible in his eyes. The audience was delighted with such an incredible match. It was the best fun for them. The blonde guy started asking Wanchul if Yang had always been such a good player. Wanchul said that it's not always. Yang is growing and every time he gets less and less tired and stronger. Yang seemed to be moving to a new level and becoming stronger with every second. Yang destroyed his opponent. He asked him to stop because something irreparable could happen. But Ian did not stop. He had to survive until the very end. The blonde guy looked at Ian, and it seemed to him that something was wrong with him. Songjo looked at everything and said that if everything continues like this, then Yang can kill his opponent. The enemy's body was almost destroyed, and Yang was not going to stop and was very cruel. Wanchul began to quickly shout at Yang. He did not understand at all what he was doing. He shouted at him to stop immediately. Wanchul was very surprised by Yang's actions, because he had never gone this far before. The managers who were present should have stopped all this immediately. People approached Jan with caution to stop all this action. But there was no way he was going to stop. It sounded in his head until the very end. Yang's opponent was in a terrible state, and no longer even asked for mercy. But Ian, as if he was not himself, continued to destroy him, until the very end. When people ran up to him to stop, something incredible began to happen. It was as if, in an arena, it opened into the warm edges of the water, which completely drew everyone in. As if in the blink of an eye, everyone who was there was drowned altogether. There I seemed to begin to come to my senses, but looking at his opponent, he saw something completely different. What he saw completely surprised him. There he saw little himself, and looking forward, he saw his father. He did not understand what was happening, and why he saw exactly this was unknown. It was like a double reflection. His father was destroying little Yang, and the great Yang was destroying little Yang. And so a little boy asks if one day he will become a tyrant like him. That is his father. And Big Yan watched this with great horror. And the words that were spoken destroyed him even more. This thought came to him long ago in childhood. As he sat and trembled in the dark, this thought always came to him. Little Ian watched his father and was afraid of becoming like him. His boss asked why he was trying so hard to work, but the guy didn't know what to answer. He continued to say that he heard Ian working until the morning, although this was personal, but he wondered why Ian was pushing himself so hard. He listened to all this and didn't know what to answer, or maybe he just didn't want to. After much thought, he finally opened up and said that he was just scared. But his boss didn't understand what kind of fear he was talking about. With documents and money, he could simply run away. He could have left this terrible place, but there was always something that prevented him from doing so. Now that he was a child, Ian remained the same person, and he returned home again. It was too natural for him. As always, he came in, and then the door closed as if as a sign that there was no turning back. If you repeat the same thing over a certain period of time, everything gets used to it. It's all the same for the people who do it, and for the people who receive it. Having experience of violence, Ian was used to it since childhood. And after that, the thought of running away eventually completely disappeared at that time. He still had no way to run away. But be that as it may, he was raised this way. And then the little boy says a fatal phrase, saying everything is fine. And a violent hand took him by the hair, continuing to call him low and bad words. The father took and threw the little boy out the door, and the great John watched this situation. But Ian wanted to keep the boy who was next to him, not to do like his father. He already tried to object, but a large number of different hands reached out to him. These people grabbed Ian as best they could and took him away from the little boy. They held him and he was left all alone in front of the door, which may have been his salvation. And at that very moment, the great Yang realized that he did not want this anymore. And the little boy scattered. The only reason the guy held back was the desire to learn to live. With all the strength he had, he tried to escape from the hands of the invaders. He struggled because it wasn't exactly the time when he needed to return to life. Yang was like some kind of deity. He completely appeared above these people who wanted to carry him away. And when the struggle was over, he fell to the ground as if completely exhausted. He completely escaped with his whole body, escaped from the invaders who were trying to stop him. As if some entity was breaking out of their hands and running away the faster. He needed to escape or be rescued. He rushed towards the door. He broke down the door and found a picture of his father again mocking little Ian. He mocked the little boy without an iota of compassion, even though he was his own son. Yang, as a true savior, took him away and began to destroy him. He was cruel and without a drop of compassion. He wanted to end this as quickly as possible. It was then, when he was a little boy, that a thought occurred to him. This thought was cruel, and it was whether he would become the same monster as his father. But in the former monster, will he end it forever? Will he become free? He looked at the boy who had just suffered at the hands of a tyrant. He was here for him and saved him. The boy offered his hand with a little hesitation, but still put his hand in the hand of the savior, and they walked together, holding each other's hands until they left. Ian opened the door and invited the boy to a world where there was a joyful glow. And Ian himself walked around the arena, and only he knew where he was going. The fans present looked at his appearance. They were scared and even hurt by this. He stopped in front of Won Chul and the blonde guy. They were somewhat outraged and very scared to see him like this. Ian, in a very bad way, said that he did not want to participate in this anymore, because he no longer had any reason to make money. Now, having finished everything and with everyone to the end, he wants to live his life. Those present were discussing who this guy was who had done so many things. It was said that this was a completely new guy, but his skills did not correspond to what was said. He appeared in the arena like a monster. The problem was that even the organizer could not imagine this. There is a possibility that he would not turn a blind eye to it. One of the guys said that we need to quickly leave here, leave this place, but there was another person in the hall. It was Song Jo, who sat very strangely and thought. He was delighted with the battle he saw. Nothing had inspired him so much for a long time. He remembered what Yang was like, and there wasn't even a drop of fear there. He caught himself thinking that he would look at such a fight again. Song Jo thought that he had finally found a toy that he actually really wanted. The blonde guy was somewhat furious, and told Ian that he must definitely take responsibility for what he had created. But he returned the bag with the uniform to him, and said that this was the only thing he had to do. The blonde guy shouted that this is not a situation that can be solved with money, and that the match organizers are very serious people. In this situation, he was much more scared than Ian, because it was he who introduced him. But completely calm, Ian replied that it was none of his business, and he was not interested in it. The blonde guy was shocked by such a statement from Ian. He was very scared, and asked if the guy had always been like this. Young did not answer that they saw in him only a child and a bird, which brought in a pretty good income. People thought that he was crazy for following their lead, and that he would do anything for money. Young said with extraordinary indifference that their agreement concerned only the financial issue, so for now they had nothing to communicate about. With this answer, the guy said goodbye and moved towards the exit. Won Chul and the guys just watched. Won Chul may have been pleased with Yang's actions, but the blonde boy was disappointed that he left after doing so many things. I went down the stairs, but the adventures did not end there and much more awaited him. The people he was supposed to stand by stood ready, and at the sight of him they were going to do what they had planned. One of the men noticed the bag that Ian was carrying all the time. Most likely there was money in it. The guy was walking and heard from behind that someone was approaching him in some kind of transport. They were already very close to him, and he turned around in surprise, not understanding who it could be. It was Seong Jo in his car. He drove closer to the guy and politely greeted him. Ian was surprised and did not understand what kind of person he was, and asked who he was. Seong Jo replied that I was just one of the spectators and was somewhat interested, and asked if Yang had a minute for him. But Ian replied that he was no longer participating in battles and simply left. Seong Jo was surprised and asked why the guy needed money. The guy stopped the bag and said that he didn't need any more money, that he would have enough. I didn't go any further, not paying any attention to my new acquaintance. Seong Jo was somewhat angry at this behavior. Seong Jo thought that he needed to keep an eye on Yang, because he couldn't just let him go. Something appeared near his mother that interested him very much and somewhat outraged him. These were people who wanted to take Yang's money. The motorcycle drove past Seong Jo at high speed. The motorcyclist quickly drove up to Ian and snatched his bag containing the money. It was terrible. I didn't know what to do with it because he had lost his income, which was quite difficult for him. Songjo was surprised to see this picture and did not understand what was happening, and it seems he got a second chance to meet Ian very quickly. Songjo needed this second chance, and he decided to act without thinking. Songjo drove up to Yang and asked if he needed to catch the attackers. Yang didn't know what to answer. Songjo told Yang to hurry up with his decision because it might be too late. I nevertheless decided and asked for help from Songjo to catch up with the kidnappers. Songjo was happy with Yang's answer and told him to wait a little and they would talk later. Ian was left alone and didn't know what to do. He was just waiting for something good. Two men were traveling, and for them this matter was much easier than expected. But in 1 minute everything can change, and they wanted to destroy the man for what he did. A car started to drive up to him. He didn't understand what it was for and why they were doing it. She was approaching and seemed to be waiting for some opportune moment. The car window opened and Songjo was there with a weapon. He looked quite confident. This surprisingly scared the guy very much, and he was afraid of it, not knowing what could happen next. And then shots began from Songjo. With this, he wanted to stop the attacker and deal with him. The shots continued, and the attacker flew off the motorcycle and fell to the ground. His partner saw this and started calling him by his name Hyung-nim. He was lying on the ground and continued to hold the bag with money in his hands. Since there was a car behind, Songjo had to turn on his hazard lights. Songjo got out of the car and pretended to take out his phone. Then he pretended that someone was calling from a car that was driving behind him and was already close. He pretended that it was just a simple accident and that he could take care of everything on his own. He hoped that the car would not start to stop. As expected, she did not do this. Songjo was right in his guesses. He continued to say that everyone is busy with their own lives and there is no need to get involved in other people's situations. Songjo grabbed the man by the helmet and pulled him to the side of the road. Songjo pushed the guy onto a stone and he hit with a roar, experiencing considerable pain. Being in a helmet, it really hit him hard. He began to take off his helmet and asked Songjo who he was and why he was doing this. Songjo had no intention of answering the questions, but simply pointed the weapon at the man. The husband was very surprised and frightened when he looked at the place where the ball was now. Songjo looked at him and asked if he was still interested in knowing the answer to his question. He replied that he had no more questions, as long as they didn't kill him, and his partner stood behind where no one saw him. Songjo ordered the kidnapper to throw the bag of money at his feet. Songjo said not to be afraid of him, because he only came for the bag and asked why they stole it. He began to justify that it was his money, and Ian was to blame for it. Songjo understood what these people were doing, but Yang was young enough to borrow a lot of money from them. The kidnapper replied that Ian's father borrowed the money, and the guy was paying for him. But Songjo decided to turn the situation around, coming up with a plan to bring the guy as close as possible to himself. Songjo was still not very sure about Yanov, so he just wanted to observe him. But now he had everything in full view. He believed that Yang should not deal with this situation. Songjo unzipped his bag and remembered Yang's words as he said that he was no longer going to participate in battles. But Songjo really wanted to see the guy in the arena again. Songjo began to pour out money and remembered Yang's words as he said that it would be enough for him to stop fighting. But Songjo believed that he could give him much more. So he took out a lighter and wanted to turn his idea into reality. The kidnapper sat quietly and did not understand what Songjo was going to do. Songjo lit the lighter, and now he is very close to his goal. He began to set fire to the money, while saying that he needed very little time to influence Ian. He wanted to try to force Ian to take part in battles again. He looked very terrible from the light of the fire, and said that if both Ian and his creditors needed money, then it would succeed. Songjo sat with Yang on a bench and asked what the guy was thinking about. He said that he was sorry that they left. Songjo asked what he meant, because this money was of great importance to the guy. He asked if he thought it was unfair. Ian replied that he was not at all surprised, because money always leaves him. Next, Yang turned to Songjo and asked what he wanted to talk about. What exactly he had that was interesting. Songjo said that he knows about how Yang was banned from entering the ring, but he can help with that. Ian looked at him in surprise, and did not quite understand what he wanted from him. Songjo repeated that he could help the guy return to the ring. Songjo remembered the guy's words when you said that he no longer needs money, but different situations can happen. He gave him his business card, saying that when the guy thinks about it, let him call and he will definitely help. Ian had some kind of déjà vu. Remembering the blonde guy, he thought about the fact that they might be acquaintances. But Ian didn't say anything and took the business card, thanking him. Maybe he'll call after all. Songjo smiled sweetly and said that he would leave here first. Songjo concluded by saying that he was looking forward to the next meeting, and left. Ian sat alone, holding a business card in his hands. He looked at it and thought because he needed to return the money. He looked at the business card and wondered what to do with it and what to do. And here he does something completely unexpected, both for everyone and for himself. By these actions, he showed that a new stage would soon begin, and he did not need everything that was in his old life. The next one started with breakfast with his father. His father looked rather uncollected. That's how his father started the conversation with this question about whether Yang gave the money. At first, Ian did not answer, and then his father addressed him calling him his son, and Ian did not know what to say. His father continued by asking how much money Ian had and asked him to lend him some, but being quite calm, Ian replied that he did not have any money. The father asked why this was so, and hoping for a positive answer, he asked whether the guy gave almost all the money to creditors. Now Ian began to realize that he could clearly see his father's true face. His father continued to say how difficult times were, and asked for money until he found a job. He believed that their family was in a difficult situation. It was difficult for him to pay for insurance, services, and food himself. Ian saw that this family he had was just pretending well. The guy wanted to believe his father at least a little. He began to remember Si-yoon asking about his family at the hospital and why she wasn't with him now. Ian remembered the entire conversation from beginning to end, how he made excuses for the fact that his father may not appear at home quite often. But saying one thing was completely different. His father was not in touch at that time. The guy thought that he had found a job, because why could he be so busy? After being discharged, he called the front desk and asked if insurance could cover all of his treatment. But he was informed that his father had refused insurance 2 years ago, and Ian was disappointed. But his father told him that he was paying for the insurance. Ian thought that therefore he should not forget about payment. He further recalled the time when he came to pay half of the debt, and one of the men asked where he got the money. The guy didn't say what he actually did. Ian said that he just worked. He promised these people that in the near future, he would definitely pay off all his debts. For these people, such words were a surprise, because the amount was quite large, and next time the guy should bring more. But Ian assured them that he would soon give everything back, and asked them not to come to his house anymore. With these words, the guy said goodbye and quickly headed for the exit. But it was clear that they didn't want to let him go just like that. The main one of these men reported, not very good news. He said that Ian's father had borrowed money again, quite a large amount. These words greatly disappointed the guy, and made him stop in some stupor. He was waiting for the next words. The man mockingly continued to tell Ian to behave well, because he was watching him. Ian thought that his father had new problems, and the guy didn't understand why he didn't tell him about it. Ian knew that his father received money while the guy didn't know, and it couldn't be that he didn't have it. His father was lying about how hard it was for him. During the conversation, a message arrived on my father's phone. The guy was very interested in it. He looked at the phone with great interest, and the message contained information about whether he enjoyed the vacation. The father tried to hide the phone, but everything became very clear to Ian. This angered the guy because he hoped that his father had begun to change. He considered himself very weak because he was exposed to emotions. It was very depressing for him. The father turned to the guy again, but not very politely, and asked if he had anything. Continuing to experience all the emotions within himself, Yang calmly replied that he definitely had nothing. But now these words really angered his father, because his son did not understand how hard it was for him. He leaned on the table in disappointment and asked himself, and maybe his son, what he should do with it. But this didn't bother Ian at all, and he continued to be calm, picking up food from the table. He did not react in any way to his father's behavior, and put the food in his mouth. The guy continued to eat as if nothing had happened, and his father did not disintegrate in pity. He looked at his father, and mentally thought to himself that he only had to wait a little longer. He believed that when he left this place, his father would no longer have to behave this way. A new day had arrived when a lot could change, either for better or for worse. Finally, Ian could go to university, and his father showed that he had not changed one bit. He walked to the university, held documents in his hands, and looked at them very thoughtfully. He was very glad that despite everything he had some savings. He was thinking about living separately. First, he needed to find a part-time job despite everything. There was still a lot that he didn't know about. Yang had never been interested in such things, and there was no one with whom he could discuss it. He read on the internet that it was worth renting a house with someone, and this idea interested him. But he didn't know with whom he could do this, probably with one of his close people. And then the guy was called a name and pulled out of his thoughts. This frightened him somewhat, and he turned around in surprise. It was Se-yoon. She came closer to the guy and looked at him, asking if he was really. Then she asked if the guy was going to university, and why he had not appeared there for a long time. The guy was still surprised, and seemed a little lost in the questions and answers. The girl looked at him outrageously and told him not to say that he didn't know her. But the guy replied that she was Si-yoon. The girl was happy that at least he answered like that. And then Jan did something completely incomprehensible. He asked what the girl was doing today after university. Without allowing her to answer, he again asked if she agreed to rent a house together. The girl was very surprised by the first question, but the second was not at all clear and quite interesting. In the classroom, the teacher was already finishing his lecture, the last for that day. Hana asked Seon if she was working now. The girl suggested going to watch a movie, but Seon couldn't go with the girl because she had plans today. Hana was surprised, she was interested, and she asked what the plans were and with whom. Seon didn't know what to answer, and simply said that there was someone there somewhere, which made Hana even more interested. Instantly, Hana asked if the girl really had a boyfriend. Everything was not at all as it might seem. Seon said that everything was not like that at all, but she didn't know what to answer. All because it was Ian who asked the girl not to tell anyone about this. Seon thought the guy was very strange, because this is exactly what he asked for at the hospital. She didn't understand why this was necessary. It seemed that Yang was hiding quite a lot about himself, but in fact, he believed that there was simply no point in dragging many people into this situation. The girl agreed to this without objection, and said that they would meet after the lesson was over. Young also did not object and agreed with her plan of action. She did not expect any other answer. Seon said that she would meet her friend. She thought that if she and Yang were meeting on the university campus, then they could lie a little. And while Seon was somehow trying to get out of it, so as not to tell Ian's secret, some people approached the girls, who were very surprised. It was Yang who came to pick up Seon. It was difficult to tell if these actions were truly correct. Hana was very surprised, but also very happy to see Ian. But Seon did not understand what he was doing now. The girl was silent, and he continued to say whether everything was fine, because they agreed to go together. Hana sat in even greater surprise. Seon said that they agreed to meet without anyone seeing them, and she didn't understand why Young asked her in front of Hana. Ian was surprised to see such a girl, but he didn't understand what his mistake was. In the back rows, Jan was noticed by their other friends, Hansu and another girl. They were glad to see him. Young began to make excuses and said that he did not know that their friends would be here. But Seon did not understand how he could not know this. Hansu came up and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. He asked if Ian was at the lecture, and they were wondering where they were going. Hana began to say that they were having a secret date. She asked the girl why she didn't tell her about it earlier. Seon began to say that everything is not at all as it seems. She let slip a little about the apartment. Ian looked at the girl in surprise. Sadness was noticeable in his eyes. He did not understand what would happen next. The girl saw the expression on Ian's face, and she realized that she had said a little too much out of excitement. In order not to make further mistakes, Seon took the guy's hand and dragged him towards the exit, saying that they needed to go. Hansu and the girl talked about the fact that there could be something between them. They did not understand what she meant by letting slip about the apartment. Outside, Seon told Yang that he should definitely explain everything to them, especially Hani. They might understand everything wrong, but the guy didn't understand what exactly could be misunderstood. The girl was furious because Ian didn't understand anything, and she explained that their friends might think that they were dating. The girl was still looking at Ian furiously, and he didn't know what to answer. The girl said that they should hurry, and only then they would talk about it. Arriving at a real estate agency, the consultant mistook two friends for newlyweds. These two sat and did not understand how and why the woman thought that way. They did not know what to answer. Sayeon, relying on previous events, asked Yang to explain to her that this was not so. But Ian did something completely incomprehensible, and not at all what the girl asked. He asked if there were discounts for newlyweds. The girl, hearing this, furiously said that this was not what she wanted, but Ian calmly replied that he was just interested. Then the woman realized that Ian was a student, and she had quite a lot of options that she could offer. Seon was more proactive than Yang, and asked if they could visit them right away. The woman, of course, agreed to show them all the apartments, and now they were in the first option. The female consultant explained that although this apartment had some drawbacks, it was quite clean, and maintenance in such places was inexpensive. Seon asked if they could visit other options. Yang seemed not to be involved at all. While at the agency, the consultant asked if they wanted to move in immediately after signing the agreement. Next, the woman offered to start working on the contract and make payment. The guy wanted to pay, but Seon stopped him and said that the payment should be paid directly to the owner. That would be the right thing to do. The consultant said that the owner is currently at work, and she cannot contact him. Seon replied that they were doing this for the first time, and they wanted to do it according to the rules, so they would wait for the owner. The woman consultant agreed, and said that she would try to contact him. It was already evening. Seon told Yang to be sure to find out the date of the meeting and take it with him, and she reminded him to be sure to go to the service center. She also reminded him to find out if there is insurance for the deposit, if it is not returned, and it is important for him to find a job. This information was important to him, but its volume was very large. He stood there thinking about everything. The girl knew quite a lot about this. Yang asked how she knew all this so well. The girl replied that she learned all this after graduating from school, but for now she decided to stay with her parents. The guy didn't answer, and Sion said that if it's all over, they can leave. He agreed and followed the girl. Today he said little and mostly just agreed with Sion. Yang walked and got ahead of Sion, as if he was not walking with her at all. She was a little embarrassed by his behavior. Sion said that she helped him in many ways, and that he could repay him with dinner. Ian realized that it would be right and agreed. Then he asked where the girl would like to go. The girl was very glad that Ian agreed, and without saying where she wanted to go, she ran in an unknown direction. She was already standing at the entrance to the establishment when Yang walked behind her. Sion ordered a table from the waiter for two. Ian watched the girl thoughtfully. It was completely unusual for him to spend time like that. The waitress recommended that Sion and Yang take the set for couples. There was a discount on it, although they were not a couple but ordered this set. Sion said that she was very hungry and was eager to start eating. Sion asked if Yang liked it. She admitted that she had wanted to visit this place for quite a long time. Ian answered briefly, saying that it was very tasty for him, but from the expression on his face one could understand that he really liked it. Sion said that she really liked this establishment, and now she felt a delightful lightness in her soul. Sion asked Yang if he liked coffee, and offered to go to one place where she would now pay. Yang, as usual throughout the day, agreed with Sion without objection, and they came to the cafe. There were quite a lot of people here, but we can assume that they had the best place. Sion said that it is very funny when they are considered a couple, especially the woman from the agency thought that they were newlyweds. She didn't understand whether Yang could hear her at all. It was as if she was talking to herself. Ian seemed to be listening to the girl, but he was still in his own thoughts, keeping everything to himself. Sion decided not to get angry, but simply ask why Yang gets into himself and his thoughts quite often. This question made him somewhat embarrassed. He did not answer right away, and whether he would really tell the truth was a mystery. But he still decided to say that he was simply very pleased to use the money that he himself had earned. Of course, Sion was somewhat surprised by this answer, and he didn't know how to respond to this. Now she realized that this behavior was just a small pleasant joy for him. Sion said that she would go and return the order so that he would pay again this time. This answer from the girl surprised Yana and left her confused about how to proceed. But in reality, Sion was just joking a little and said that she wouldn't do it. Young was even more surprised. This girl could easily mislead him, so he had no idea how to act. Sion decided to change the topic of conversation and asked if it was because of saving money that Yang was always busy. This was indeed the case. The girl said that he needed to rest anyway, because it was hard to bear. Ian asked if they would spend the same evening on the day of signing the contract. Sion replied that maybe everything will be like this. Yang said that he really liked such an evening. The girl was very surprised by these words. She didn't even know how to react to it. But then when she calmed down and looked at the real Ian, it made her smile and she said that she was also pleased. Yang and Sion sat in a wonderful spiritual atmosphere that was very pleasant for both of them. They just silently enjoyed it. Songjo sat and looked at the phone, as if he was really expecting something. He was thinking that he had already given his business card to Yang for quite some time, but he still hadn't called. Instead of putting pressure on him, the creditors became quiet. Most likely, Songjo scared them very much. Hyungnim's partner said that his life was much more valuable than pieces of paper. They were frightened by what happened. Songjo had a real gun. They didn't understand who he was that he could carry a gun with him. Hyungnim said that Seonjo's look was as if he didn't care who he killed. Then he thought that his end had already come. They were wondering what Yang was doing. That there were such people behind him, it was all quite strange, and it seemed that Seongjo was up to something. Therefore, they decided to simply observe before taking any important step, and they needed to appear near them less. Strange people stood ready, waiting for any command. A blond guy sat on the floor, very beaten. The man sitting opposite said that he really didn't like stupid people. He continued to say that last year there was already a guy because of whom he had big losses, and now the same thing is happening again. The man said that he needed to set an example for others to prevent the situation from happening again. He gave the phone and ordered that this photo be sent to all the players so that they would understand that bad behavior would be meted out to them in the same way. After that, the man finished his business and simply left the room, where the fair-haired guy was still there. This man's target was the next guy, that is Yang. They all left, leaving the blonde guy all alone. He received the phone. He needed to at least act somehow, at least do something. The blonde guy began to look for the contact he needed. His plan was known only to him. And finally he found the number he needed. He definitely needed help. On the second line they picked up, the blonde guy called Wan Chul on the phone, because he was always with him. The blonde guy told him to find Ian and told him to run because he was in danger. Seon and Yang came to university together. Their friends found it quite interesting and asked if they were dating. Hana was most interested in this. She asked if they were having a secret date on the spot. Seon began to say that everything is not as it seems and that everyone misunderstood the situation. Yang suddenly said that he was looking for housing, but he didn't understand anything about it and asked Seon for help. The girl seemed to have not yet understood everything that was said and began to agree. But at the moment when she realized that everything was revealed, she angrily asked why he told, because they agreed not to tell. Yang replied that it was because of Seon's tension. She thanked him because she couldn't have done it on her own. Hana suddenly became very happy and said that they shouldn't have hidden because this was all quite normal. To celebrate, Hana offered to go eat, saying that her stomach could no longer stand it and was growling a lot. But suddenly, a very cool car drove up to a group of friends, which misled many. It was Seong-jo. He asked Yang why he didn't contact him, so he decided to find him himself. Seong-jo wondered if Yang had a moment for him, and everyone who was nearby was very shocked. The car stopped in the university yard. Everyone was surprised to see this. Everyone was wondering who it was. Hansu was very nervous and asked if they were really allowed to see the car. Seong-jo gave him the keys and allowed him to drive around the university. Hansu said that he was afraid to drive, so he would just look, and also noticed that he liked used cars. Everyone was captivated by the car. They ran towards it because many dreamed of sitting in such a car at least once. Seong-jo said with some mockery that if her friends liked her cars, she would have bought newer cars. Hana looked at Sunjo. She really liked him. She thought that such a handsome guy was probably famous. But she quickly began to drive these thoughts away, because she remembered that she had Yang. No matter how hard she tried to push these thoughts away, Seong-jo still attracted her attention very much. Seong-jo looked with confusion and surprise at Hana, who was not yet very familiar to him. And suddenly, an old childhood dream about a fan club escaped from her soul. It seems that it will soon come true. She began to calm herself down, because she had long ago decided that there would be no fan clubs, especially since Seong-jo was not that handsome. After these words, she again looked mysteriously at Seong-jo, and again began to look closely at him. Seong-jo was a little scared by this, but he politely said that Yang's friends are very nice people. After these words, the girl fell into euphoria even more, because he called her very cute. Hana fell into a stupor for a while, and looked at Sunjo in shock. Hana decided that she needed to leave before it was too late. She took Seon with her, even though she didn't want to go because she wasn't interested in looking at the car. Seong-jo stood sweetly watching the girls go, and Yang was a little angry but calm as always. And Yang didn't understand how Seong-jo found him in his university because they only met once. Seong-jo said that under any circumstances, he would find the necessary information. He asked Yang when he was going home. Seong-jo needed to see his father. Yang didn't understand why he needed this. Seong-jo said that he contacted his father to see if he wanted to take out a loan without interest. He immediately agreed. Yang asked where his father's phone number came from, whether he was a creditor. But Seong-jo could find any information. Seong-jo also said that he was not a creditor at all, but Yang did not understand what kind of person he was and what he was trying to achieve. Seong-jo told Yang not to look at him so suspiciously. He just wants to make friends. And then he added that he would do it by any means, because he had a goal. Gansu was surprised that Yang had such connections. The girl who left with Gansu asked if he knew this man. But Gansu didn't know him, and the girl thought that his words sounded as if he had already seen this man somewhere. Gangsu looked at Seong-jo and he looked very rich. Gangsu thought that he was not much older than all of them. Hansu looked at him and thought about what kind of work he had, and how he earned so much. Hana believed that he was the son of Chebel, who was immediately born a prince, and he also probably worked a lot on himself. Hansu admitted that he is very jealous of Seon-jo, because he does not worry about money at all. Seon looked at Yang and Sunjo in bewilderment, something that worried her very much. Looking at them, Seon herself didn't understand why she felt so anxious. Ian's father was walking along the road. He was very drunk, and it was difficult for him to carry out any ordinary actions. He could barely walk, but despite this he said that he felt very good. He had just arrived home, and stood near the doorknob and tried to get into the house. He tried to get home, but so far he had not succeeded at all. The door did not open. This began to make the man very angry. He did not understand that this was happening. He thought that Jan might be in the house, and began knocking on the door while shouting loudly for him to open it quickly. As if in an instant, after knocking and shouting, the door opened, and the father was pleased. He entered the house, and from the doorway began asking why the guy had been doing this for so long. But when he looked up, he saw not his son there at all, but another man who scared him very much. It was the same man who beat the fair-haired guy. As the owner of the house, he invited Ian's father. Ian's father didn't understand at all what kind of person he was in his apartment. He began to think that these were creditors. He could not even imagine that they could so easily show up at his home. He looked at the big man, and fear was visible in his eyes. He needed to act somehow. Somehow, without thinking much about the plan, he decided to run away. But the man skillfully and quickly reacted and grabbed Father Ian by the hair. They dragged him into the house, and he screamed in fear to wait. Ian's father asked for just a little more time in order to repay the debt. The man told him to shut up. But Ian's father continues to say that he is very sorry. The man could not stand it, and hit him to keep him quiet. The man walked next to his father, and began to think that it was not Ian who he really needed. His people responded that it was really not Ian. According to information, 2 people lived in the apartment, most likely his father. The man looked at Father Ian and said that it was true. The man who destroyed the stadium cannot be so weak and very unhappy. The whole appearance of Father Ian screamed for itself how pitiful he was. Yang and Sunjo were walking down the street. Most likely they were heading to Yang's house. Sungjo said that he remembers exactly how he gave his business card and asked the guy why he didn't call. Yang didn't like this conversation and didn't want Seongjo to continue pursuing him, but he started saying that he shouldn't underestimate creditors. Yang turned to Seongjo and asked how he knew about money and creditors because the guy had never told him about it. Songjo responded with a sneer that there was no longer any reason to earn money through such extraordinary work. He looked at Sunjo in bewilderment. The answer did not raise any questions at all. Ian said that if a guy knows the reason for earning money, he should know the reason why he left such a job. Further, Ian added that he realized that the debt was not his at all, and he should not repay it. The guy didn't want to talk to Sunjo anymore, so he returned and started walking in his own direction. Songjo stood as if in some kind of stupor. He really wanted to have a better relationship with Yang, but did not yet know how to do it. Seongjo went on to say that the real reason is that this type of fight suits Yang very well. That in fact Ian really wanted the same fight, as if he really liked it and wanted to repeat it again. Yang looked at Seongjo with great surprise. He did not understand what exactly the guy meant. Seongjo decided to ask what kind of fight Yang really wanted. He wanted to know what exactly Seongjo wanted. Songjo replied that Yang wanted a fight where he could kill, cruelly and mercilessly. Yang listened to Sunjo in surprise and didn't even know what to answer to this. He was in shock. Yang looked at Songjo in surprise and asked what he thought Yang wanted to kill. This amused Songjo. Songjo said with some mockery that this is exactly what he thinks. Yang was shocked. Yang was shocked by such a statement. At that moment he thought that Sunjo was just mocking him. Now looking at Songjo Yang, he was sure that this guy was just crazy. For Songjo, this was quite a fun pastime, and he was happy to talk about it. Songjo said that Yang laughed very hard, but Yang didn't understand at all what this guy was saying now. Songjo continued saying that it was at that first big fight. Songjo said that Yang knocked out all the workers who ran up to him to stop the fight, so that trouble would not happen. Yang beat his opponent until he could not breathe. This moment was quite difficult for him. And all this time, while Ian was doing these things, he was laughing, truly as if he was having fun. Sungjo said that he was interested to see if Yang could fight like a zombie. He was surprised that the guy was hiding it. Songjo said that when he saw this battle, he realized that the best fights for the guy were where he could fully show himself. Then, on the day of the fight, while in the hall, Shonjo wanted to see this whole fight to the very end. But this failed because something completely unexpected happened on Ian's part. In a moment, he came to his senses and calmed down, stopping laughing and fighting soullessly. It was clear that Yang was worried, but he said that this could not have happened at all. He could not laugh during the fight, but it amused Xianzhou. Songjo said that this is how people are built. They learn something until you tell them about it. It doesn't matter how much Yang says that this is not true, because Xiangzhou has already seen it all. Sungjo said that he got everything he wanted so badly. He extended his hand and continued to say that if there is something that he wants, he will definitely do everything or achieve the goal. Yang did not like such actions on the part of Xianzhou, and instantly repelled his hand from his face. Yang got angry and told him not to talk. He was not going to fight again, so there was no need to pursue him. Songjo was disappointed because Yang's answer was not at all what he wanted to hear. Without saying anything else, Yang turned away and walked in the direction of the house, leaving Seongjo alone on the road in thought. Ian was approaching home, but he would not have peace there either. They had been waiting for him there for quite a long time. He believed that Seongjo was very suspicious, and Yang did not know what to do if he appeared again. But first, Ian had to go into the house, and then he would think about everything else. The moment Ian wanted to go into the house, someone quickly grabbed him by the hand. Yang raised his head and looked at the person who did this, and was very surprised to see this particular person. It was Wan Chul. He said that the guy was in danger and he needed to run away as quickly as possible. Yang was even more surprised. He didn't understand what Wanchul was talking about. As if in an instant, Ian wanted to ask something, but the front door of his house not only opened, but burst out along with his husband. This was the man who first met his father, and then waited for Jan for a long time. He looked at the guy and asked Yang, then his attention was attracted by another guy who was also there. He looked at Wanchul in surprise, and asked who he was and what he was doing here. Wanchul silently looked at this man. He was thinking about how to save Yang and decided to act very quickly. He does the completely unexpected, gathering all his strength. Wanchul punches the man right in the face to distract his attention. While Yang stood and did not understand at all how to act, he still did not understand anything. Wanchul acted for two. For Yang, Wanchul's actions were completely unexpected, and it was a mystery to him how to act, but he quickly grabbed him. While the enemies were in a misunderstanding, Wanchul said to run. It was necessary to act very quickly. Yang asked Wanchul about what just happened, but Wanchul said that first he needed to break away. Wanchul explained that this is the owner of the stadium, and he came to take revenge on Yang for that fight. Wanchul and Yang were running as quickly as possible when Wanchul ran out onto the road right at him. A car was driving without stopping. It was as if she didn't want to stop in front of the person. Ian almost didn't get hit by the car either. Wanchul was shot down. Most likely they wanted to get rid of him quickly. Yang did not know exactly what to do next. There was fear and apprehension in his gaze, because he needed to help Wanchul. But his life was also in danger. The owner of the stadium and his people ran after Ian. Their goal is to catch up with the guy, because they simply need him. This minibus was that person. He attacked Ian with his body and asked him into the car. When Yang was carried away and they were going to go, Wanchul could not help because he himself needed help. The car drove away, and Wanchul remained on the road, trying to recover at least a little. The car was driving in an unknown direction. One can only guess what will happen next. Jan was held by assistance of the stadium owner. Most likely Jan is now awaiting a very serious conversation. This man, the owner of the stadium, sat opposite and asked Ian what he was thinking when he destroyed the arena to smithereens. Looking at Ian, the man had a question whether it was really him, because in appearance Ian looked very fragile. Ian believed that you need to think carefully about what this man is talking about. He remembered Wanchul saying that the owner of the arena came precisely to take revenge on Yang. From this, it was assumed that this particular man is the organizer of the fights, and now he wants to take revenge on the guy. From the very beginning, Wanchul said not to come here, because everyone comes for the money and then they realize that it's not worth it. Wanchul said that there are a lot of stupid people here, and if Yang is a student, he doesn't need to get involved with this at all, otherwise he will become like others. Ian sat completely disappointed, and had no idea what would happen to him now and how to continue to act. The man sat and carefully examined Ian. He was waiting for an answer to his previous question, but Ian was sure and was not going to answer. Without any words, the man hit Ian in the face, apparently trying to attract the guy. This man had to cancel so many matches due to the destruction of the arena, so he believed that Yang should pay for it. The man said that they contacted him and wanted to buy Ian. These people really liked how Ian destroyed the arena. The man said that there he would fight until he lost his pulse, but before that he had a personal desire. The man wanted Ian to be punished, but not just but with the help of the owner of the arena himself. And he again delivered a brutal blow right in the face. It cannot be said that it was surprisingly very painful for Ian. Yang took heavy, painful blows and contemplated finding a way to escape. After all, he understood very well that going in an unknown direction and then ending up in an unknown place was very risky. Ian received a blow again, but he accepted it without objection and patience was always with him. Due to the fact that Yang had very good endurance, the guy did not show any pain or suffering. The man looked at Ian. He dealt a rather strong blow, but Ian didn't even move. The man said something. He felt like he was just punching some guy's abs. The man looked at Ian, and his appearance made him understand that something was definitely not happening as it should. The man was getting carried away. He told his assistant to quickly check Ian's pulse. After some time, one of the guys reported that there was no breathing and no pulse. The man was furious, saying that he could not kill him so easily, or that he was just very fragile. The guy started checking everything again, and looking for a pulse. And after a while he finally found what he needed. Having found the pulse and after some time measuring it, the guy replied that he was very weak. The guy said that it could be fatal, and after the next blow, Ian might not survive death. The man became very angry, and ordered him to quickly come to his senses. One of the ideas that came to Ian's mind was to pretend to be completely dead. Ian thought that first he needed to stop breathing, then all the different functions of the refrigerator. And after more than half of the planned plan has been implemented, it will be much easier to act further. He understood very well that before implementing everything he should think carefully, and then be patient and try to escape. The guy forced himself to think about a plan and future actions for salvation. After he does all this, he will be able to free himself from the hands of the people who were holding him. But in order to escape from them, he will have to awaken his body and quickly escape. But for now, Ian didn't know how to do it all together. So for him to succeed, he needed to think. His thoughts were about how to immobilize everyone, so that no one would interfere with him or start to stop him. The guy was still in the hands of the guards, but they were no longer holding him so tightly. Young understood that at the moment of awakening, you need to be very focused. Gather all the strength in yourself, and concentrate as much as possible and begin to act without hesitation. Something incomprehensible began to happen to his body. This very frightened and surprised the guards at the same time. As soon as no one suspected anything, the guy began to act with complete concentration and without thinking about anything. He slipped out of the hands of the guards and headed towards the man who was driving the car at that time. He had hope that everything would work out. He began to control himself a little, but unsuccessfully enough that he could not be stopped. Ian made his way to the door. He was not entirely comfortable doing this, but he continued anyway. And everything worked out for him. He was able to open the door, and while the car was still moving, he flew out of it. The driver could no longer drive well, so the car flew, turning over onto the road. And the guy flew onto the road completely opposite the car. It turned over with a great roar, when there were still people in it, and Ian fell on the road and then he needed to act. He was in pain, or maybe just unpleasant, but he forced himself to get up. He needed to find help as soon as possible to escape these people. Ian quickly examined the area to understand where to go. The guy did not understand where he was taken because he saw nothing except warehouses. The guy needed to act as quickly as possible because the people who were in the car began to get out. The man who owned the arena got out of the car and shouted that he would gather all his strength. He was very angry and said that he would do his best to tear Ian apart. In the reception area, a guy with red hair came to the fight again and shouted to be given the opportunity to get into the fight again. The administrator considered this guy unhealthy and said that he was kicked out, but the red-haired one wanted to be registered again. The administrator let it slip that the boss is not in place right now, but is busy with a guy who will outdo the red-haired one. The red-haired man was surprised to hear this and asked who this guy was, what his name was, and how strong he was. The administrator was disgusted by the behavior of the red-haired guy, but still he said that the new future fighter's name seemed to be Yang. The red-haired guy was surprised to hear this particular name for several minutes. He even fell into a deep stupor. The administrator told him to be careful, because he knocked out all the guards and almost didn't kill his opponent. The red-haired guy was surprised, because Yang did not look very strong, and how did he have enough effort to destroy the arena? This interested the red-haired guy very much, and he caught himself thinking that Yang was much stronger than he could have imagined. The administrator looked at the guy while he was in his thoughts and asked why he never wears any clothes on top. The red-haired guy did not answer the administrator's questions, but asked where his boss was now. The administrator replied that he had no idea about his whereabouts and asked the red-haired guy to leave here. But the red-haired guy did not want to do this. He wanted to get an answer to his question and quickly pressed the administrator to the table. The red-haired guy demanded that the administrator tell him about the whereabouts of the boss as soon as possible, otherwise he would threaten him with death. At that very moment, the administrator, without hesitation or objection, said that they were in a warehouse complex, and that was where they had premises. After answering, the red-haired guy did not want to let go of the administrator and dragged him along, saying that he would show him the way. The owner of the stadium shouted that he would get to Ian and destroy him, because he wanted revenge. Ian believed that he needed to run. Just run to move somehow. This would definitely help him in some way. But while Ian was trying to escape, something passed next to him that really surprised him. The man was already running furiously next to him, and this greatly surprised and frightened Ian, because now there was almost no chance of escaping. The man ran so fast that he had to stop very hard to stop Ian. And when he had already stopped, he instantly started Yana so that he could not run away from him, because the man had a goal of revenge. Ian took the blows but tried to somehow avoid them and have time to escape. Somehow, magically, Ian was able to dodge and he started running again, running away from this man in order to save himself. The man did not want to let him escape, and he immediately ran after him to catch up. He caught up with him and began to threaten Ian so that he would not even think about trying to escape. Yang realized that this man was faster than him, and therefore he needed to try to escape from him or come up with another plan. When the man wanted to hit him again, Yang anticipated this and skillfully dodged the blow. He began to move back as if playing with him, but at all costs he had to get rid of this man. Ian looked at the man and realized that he wouldn't be able to just run away. The only thing left in this situation was to simply take the fight with this man. The red-haired guy and the administrator were heading to the warehouses to find the boss and the guy. The administrator reminded the red-haired guy how he ran from the boss because he also wanted to deal with him. There was an incident with the red-haired guy when he almost killed his opponent, but the owner reminded him that killing is not allowed here. When the boss intended to stop the red-haired guy, he did not want this and wanted to show his power over him. Now the red-haired guy remembered and understood what situation the administrator was talking about. The red-haired guy remembered that when he wanted to hit his boss, it didn't work because he was too strong. The man did not use any skills, but simply destroyed the enemy with physical force. This is the style that the red-haired guy disliked most. During a small fight with him, it seemed as if he did not experience blows at all when they were thrown. But this man's blows were quite simple and monotonous, as if he was beating not with his hands, but with some kind of metal bat. Then the red-haired guy didn't like it at all, and he decided not to waste time on it and just left. The red-haired guy believed that even if he won, it would not give him any pleasure from it. Young finally entered the fight and struck a blow. The man accepted it but was too strong and resilient. Young was very surprised because the man didn't even blink an eye, didn't even stagger. This indicated that the battle would be long and difficult. But the man decided not to just take the blows, but also to do them himself, and he hit Ian with all his might. He was very strong, even though his blows were monotonous and a common man did it quite skillfully. With all his strength, the man struck at Ian. Of course, the man had great advantages in terms of his physique. Young thought that the man ignored his attack, but still struck back. This could not help but surprise the guy. The presence of the next strong blows scared Ian a little, but despite this, he must survive and protect himself. The man decided to wait for something, and immediately struck a strong blow right in the guy's face. Of course, this blow had consequences. The man's blow caused Ian to fly back. It was too strong, but it was exactly the blow the man wanted to deliver. Yang fell to the ground completely inactive. Could it be that after the first blow he would be completely overcome? The man looked at him and said that he fought like a high school student. That is, very stupidly and without endurance. But Ian began to rise, which greatly surprised the man because after such a blow no one could rise. Yang was noticeably becoming angry, which meant that now he would definitely pull himself together and show what he was capable of. He thought to himself that there was still quite a bit left, and he would finally overcome his opponent. That is, this meant that he was confident of his victory. While the person is watching him, he decides to do something that will make him very surprised. He will be shocked. He strikes right in the face. The man did not expect this, and Ian mentally screamed to himself that he needed to do this as soon as possible. Young continued to throw punches. He tried to do it very hard to overcome his opponent. Ian dealt him many blows and was not at all tired, but the husband needed to somehow gain power over Ian. And when Ian wanted to strike lower, the man realized that this was a very good opportunity for him to start fighting too. He began to push Ian from above with all his strength. The guy was very unpleasant, but he still tried to withstand it. And surprisingly for himself, Yang held on very skillfully even though his opponent was quite strong, along with his actions. This surprised the man very much, and he looked at the guy very shocked. But this was not worth doing. Ian almost withstood it all, but even at this time he gained even more rage and made a blow. When Ian wanted to strike another blow to the enemy, without hesitation, he quickly did it, but it didn't work out. When he wanted to strike again, but the man suddenly grabbed his hand and held it. This greatly shocked the guy. The man said that at first he did not believe that a child could destroy his arena, but during this fight, Yang really surprised him. The man continued to say that Ian's attack was strong enough, and his stamina was that he believed that Ian would get tired quickly enough. But it was as if he was not a real person at all. But despite all this, the man said that there was a very big difference between both of them, and hit him. The battle continued, and at this time the red-haired guy and the administrator were driving to the warehouses. In the car, the administrator asked the red-voiced guy if he really thought he could defeat his boss. Small pebbles were flying into a large stone. These actions were the desire to split the large stone into small pieces. In his thoughts, he thought, if a pebble cannot break a stone, then there will definitely be another way. And at the same time he held a small pebble in his hands. The red-haired guy stood with a small stone in his hand and looked at the big stone. He was wondering how to overcome it, and then it was clear that there were other ways. And then he realized that he could use tools that would be much sharper, and he began to act, hammering the tool into a large stone. That is, this big stone was a man. It was supposed to break the big stone into small pebbles. The owner of the arena was an insignificant stone, and in order to defeat him, he needed tools and Yang to deal a heavy blow. After such tools, the large stone began to disintegrate so that this method of overcoming is good. The administrator and the red-haired guy arrived at the warehouses. They looked around the area, searching for where those they were looking for might be. The administrator and the red-haired guy looked and couldn't figure out where the boss's car was. How instantly the sounds from the fight between Ian and the owner of the arena attracted the attention of the administrator and the red-haired guy. Yang fought with the man. He was doing a very strange but painful thing for the boss. He wanted to save himself. The administrator and the red-haired guy stood and looked at the situation and did not understand at all what was happening. Yang bit the man's hand. It was a very big shock, and it was surprisingly very painful for the boss to endure this. Blood was already oozing from his hand. He tried to somehow fight back, but Ian was strong enough and was not affected. Of course, this motive for the fight was very auxiliary. The man could no longer endure this pain and did not know how to stop it. The guy did not want to let go of his teeth, and the man decided to pick him up and somehow throw him off. He threw the guy to the ground and with his other hand tried to move him away from where he caught his teeth. In some very magical way, the man was able to make Yang let go of his bite was very deep. The man looked at the guy lying on the ground. It was very painful for him to endure this pain, but Ian was not going to stop. Yang had strength in a big attack. Looking at him, one could understand that he was still not tired because his endurance was at the highest level. And while the man stands in shock and in great pain, Ian is about to strike him again with a very strong blow. The administrator looked in surprise, said that the boss was losing, and the red-haired guy really liked it. He was glad that the boss was losing. In the blink of an eye, another car arrived at this place, the windows of which were tinted, and the red-haired guy said that this man deliberately did not show his face. Suddenly a man came out, surprising everyone present. Everyone was very interested in why he came here and how he found this place. The administrator looked at this man and he knew him. The arrival of this particular man was an even greater shock. It was Park Wan-chul. Even though he was hit by a car and felt very bad, he still came here to help Yang. The administrator said that Wan-chul was a fighter in their arena. He didn't understand what the man was doing here. It really shocked him. Wan-chul said that he was in all the properties of these people. There were many of them. He asked where the other guards were. The administrator repeated himself in surprise, remembering that there should be other guards here. He did not see them. He said that they really should be here, but he didn't know where they were. There was only the boss who was now fighting with Yang. The administrator, along with Wan-chul, began to inspect the area to see where other guards might be. The administrator's attention was drawn to a car that had been involved in an accident. There were other guards there, but unfortunately these guys were dead. The administrator looked at this picture in surprise. He was shocked, and about himself he said that this could not be Yang. He hoped for it. Then turning his attention to the boss and Yang, who were still fighting, he thought that the guy was strong enough and almost in no way inferior to the boss. The administrator was angry at the boss, and he didn't understand who this guy was, that he could act like that now and wasn't afraid at all. The red-haired guy looked at this whole picture with great delight and really liked it. He said that these people invited a child to fight, who was considered just a fighting dog. But in fact, the guy turned out to be a young tiger. Yang had no pity for his opponent, and the man simply could no longer endure this pain. Yang was quite cruel to him. It seems the man no longer saw it all, because he shouted at the top of his voice asking where Ian was, while he was waving his hands everywhere. The red-haired guy looked at Ian and realized that he had grown quite a lot since their last meeting. Therefore, one could conclude that Yang, who at first glance seems rather frail and a very bad fighter, is not a prey at all. Ian was a real predator who, no matter what, wanted to survive and get a win. And for this he would do everything. A man who was very strong, and his very appearance was very frightening, was now completely destroyed to the ground, and all this because of Ian. The fight was coming to an end, because the man had almost no strength to fight further. Ian wanted to completely overcome his opponent. Therefore the guy, gathering all his strength, delivers the final blow to the man. He believes that this will soon be over. Young stood and watched as his opponent fell to the ground. His gaze was as empty. As always, he was experiencing everything inside himself. The man fell to the ground with a strong gruet, and Yang stood like a winner in front of him. But the matter was not over yet. The man was almost powerless, but when he fell, he said that he would never let Ian go, even if he didn't even hope for it. After these words, Ian does something completely unexpected for himself and those watching. He grabs the man's neck, and it is completely unclear why this is necessary. The guy thought that if he didn't end things with him now, then this man would definitely come to him again and not give him peace. The red-haired guy really liked it. He was pleased with what he saw and shouted for Yang to continue doing it. But Wan-chul shouted for Yang to move away from the man, and did not do it because this was not the right decision for him. Ian continued to hold him by the neck, and something began to happen that surprised and interested him very much. Ian found himself in the world of his thoughts, where the important question arose whether he really wanted to become a monster by committing his first murder. He didn't know how to act, and which side to choose, because the main thing now was his life, and his choice could very quickly change the guy's life. His dark essence told him that in order to get rid of this man, he first needed to become a monster, and he would help with this. He wanted to help the guy kill this man, and if no one came to help, then things could quickly change for the worse. The red-haired guy really liked it, and he was rooting for Yang. He considered him simply unbeatable. But Wonchul could not allow this. Yang almost strangled his opponent. He was on the verge of becoming a real monster, but whether he would actually succeed is unknown. But it is Wonchul who does not allow the guy to finish what he started. He did not want Yang to make this terrible mistake. He pushed the guy to the ground, and it seems that a serious conversation is now awaiting him. Wonchul was shocked at what Yang could come to. Wonchul reminded the guy what he told him when they first met, namely that he would become like everyone else in this circle. Yang was still lying on the ground, thinking about what had happened, but Wonchul's words added even more thoughts. Ian had recently decided to start a new life, to try what it was like to live happily, and almost did not miss this chance. He was only interested in one question. Whether he had a chance to return back, he really needed it. But Wonchul replied that when the guy dared, there was no turning back, and he was stuck up to his ears in this swamp. These words were very disappointing to Ian at a time when he wanted to have a chance at least some hope for a brighter future. But then Wonchul said that Yang still has the opportunity to go back, which was very strange. Wonchul said that the fair-haired guy who brought him here makes money by forcing stupid guys to participate in this. Wonchul continued to say that this man, the owner of the arena, is a monster because he forces the players to fight by giving them medicine. And that abnormal red-haired guy who tried to kill Ian is a real killer who has already left several people dead. But Wonchul, he is also a killer who came to take revenge on the man who killed his friend. Young listened to all this and was very shocked. He did not understand what would happen now. He really did not want Wonchul to get hurt. And taking the owner of the arena by the hair, Wonchul pushed the knife he brought with him straight into his heart. His goal was achieved. He said that all this time, he took part in battles not because of duty. Debt was only an opportunity to stay here for a long enough time. Wonchul came to the arena only to find those people who forced his friend to take medicine that day. The boss told his friend that he could not leave the arena whenever he wanted. He was a fighting dog who would follow orders. Wonchul said that now Yang must understand that everyone who comes to the arena either simply dies or becomes a monster. And this will happen to everyone. Everyone who comes here will become a monster, some for money, some because of an inexpressible desire that cannot be calmed and asks for more and more. Others come only through the pleasure they get during fights when they destroy their opponents. And someone comes here and becomes a monster because of an inexpressible desire for revenge, which does not allow them to live in peace. But the point of it all was that monsters grow from each other and learn from each other. Wonchul asked Yang not to become a monster and not be on this bad path, but to become a good person and live like a person. Wonchul asked Yang to give up his cruel life, calling him small. In an instant, one could hear that nearby the police, the red-haired guy and the administrator did not understand where it had come from and who had told them. Wonchul told Yang to go now, because everything is already over. He asked the guy to live his life normally. The red-haired guy grabbed Ian's hand, and together with the administrator, they ran to the car. They had to hurry. Sion was at her workplace when police started driving past the store window. She was heading towards the house where Sion lived. This really surprised the girl because why would she be here? This gave rise to thoughts that something very bad could happen. Ian also lived there. A large number of people gathered on the street. Everyone was wondering what happened and why the police were here. People stood and talked among themselves, asking what happened here. One of those present said that there might have been a murder. This was a shock for everyone. One of the women present said that the murders had really returned again, because once upon a time there had already been such a situation in this house. They started asking the woman what murder she was talking about. She replied that not so long ago. But there had been a murder in the area. On the day of graduation, the girl came home and found the situation as her father got drunk and killed her mother. The girl's father disappeared, and everyone considers him missing. This tragic story shook the entire area. The girl continued to live in her parents' house, and this scared people very much, because after this they were afraid to even enter this room. The woman said that because of this situation, housing prices had dropped very rapidly. But the man said that it was unlikely that anyone would want to buy it here. And then the woman screamed in surprise. Sion walked between the crowd, and the woman said that this particular girl was the daughter of the killer. Ian's father was now talking to the police and saying that the creditors simply beat him up. He didn't understand why they didn't believe him. The police officers asked the man to calm down and asked if there was another reason for these people to come here. After all, there was a murder, and all the cars that were at the crime scene came to this house. When the girl heard the murder that had happened, she was very surprised. She remembered that terrible day when she came home and saw a terrible picture, her dead mother. She immediately began to run to Ian's father. The police did not understand why the girl was doing this, and for everyone else present it was a surprise. The girl approached Ian's father and asked if one of the people who came to see him had a scar on his eye. She showed a photograph of an unknown man and asked if he was there. She asked Father Ian to look very carefully. The police did not let me talk to Ian's father, because they were working and asked the girl to wait and talk to him later. One of the workers said that if Ian's father is to be believed, these people came for money, but he didn't understand why they left so easily. The people who were there said that they were just following orders. That was their job. The killer said he was simply following people and saw the perfect opportunity to deal with the victim. The worker said that everyone was not telling something, but it was difficult to understand because there were no witnesses at the crime scene. All the residents heard something happening, but they were afraid to look out and find out what was happening. Now that the police had finished talking to Yang's father, Si-yeon wanted to talk to him about her own issues. The girl approached the man and asked what was wrong with Ian and whether he had returned home. She was very worried about him. The father was very angry to hear about his son and said that he was not at all interested in where he was because he refused to help him in a difficult time for him. Ian's father became interested in who this girl was, and he asked if she was his friend, but the girl had nothing to say. Yang was now riding with the red-haired guy and the administrator, and he didn't understand what was happening to him because the guy's nose began to bleed. The administrator said that he was very surprised because Ian was alive and looked very good after the fight with the boss. The administrator continues to say that he doesn't know how they will live now without their boss. He is very sorry that he died such a death. The red-haired guy replied that he shouldn't worry about it because they were like a bunch of trash that would find their pile again. And remembering the garbage, the administrator said that he didn't understand at all why he contacted the police and told them where to come. The red-haired guy said that the seats in the car were quite uncomfortable, and when he tried to sit comfortably, he saw a wallet. It was Ian's wallet. The red-haired guy took his documents and began to carefully study them. The red-haired guy told the receptionist that they needed to drop Ian off at the nearest hospital so he could get help. The red-haired guy opened the door to the car as he walked and pushed Ian out of there, telling him to stay alive for the fight. The guy was lying on the road. It was already a dark night and there was no one around who could help Ian. A red-haired guy entered the room and announced that he was home, while wiping off the blood on his hands with a napkin. Sung-jo said that recently he began to go out quite often, and asked if it was by chance because of that interesting guy whom he really wanted to find. The red-haired guy reported that he found him, but he was in no condition to fight, so he was sent to the hospital. But there must be a duel, because the red-haired guy knows which hospital he is in, walks around and also knows his address. Sung-jo asked if he could have a look, because he was also very interested in looking at this guy. The red-haired guy gave Sung-jo the documents of Yang, a guy who was very interesting to both of them, but to each in his own way. Sung-jo looked at Yang's documents, and immediately after what he saw, his face changed. He was surprised that it was Yang who the red-voiced guy was looking for. The red-haired guy asked Sung-jo how he was doing with his toy, which he had also been chasing for a long time. Sung-jo still held Yang's documents in his hands and replied that he was supposed to meet with the seller tomorrow, but he died. The red-haired guy mocked this situation somewhat, saying that such situations are very stupid. But Sung-jo said that there is no need to worry, because there is another seller, and very soon his toy will be in his hands. Sung-jo asked the red-haired guy why Yang needed to go to the hospital. Had he really brought him to such a state? The red-haired guy replied that if he had fought with him, he would not have left him alive, and explained that this was all because of the destruction of the arena. Sung-jo asked if Yang laughed when he beat the boss. He wondered if he was the same as he was then in the arena at his first big fight. The red-haired guy replied that he was too far away because he didn't see, and said that it wasn't Yan who killed the boss. Instantly, the red-haired guy started shouting what he said about the beating, so he was wondering how Sung-jo knew. But Sung-jo said that he talked about it and asked that he really forgot so quickly. But the red-haired guy started shouting that he remembers everything. Seong-jo, in order not to quarrel, said that he is smarter than everyone. Sung-jo mockingly said that memories can often be forgotten, so the red-haired guy will have to have someone remind them. Sung-jo said that if this happens, then we need to deal with this rather red-haired guy. He didn't understand what he was talking about. The red-haired guy asked what Sung-jo was doing before he arrived. He was working on his toy. His new development was to create all the conditions so that his toy would be with him an unbearable family that had quite a lot of debt, a child who had to grow up quite early, Being in society, he accumulated many disappointments. He paid his father's debts, experiencing great stress from creditors. But then the guy's father died, unable to pay off all his debts. After some time, the guy completely disappeared. He lost contact with the outside world and fell through the ground, hiding in the darkness from everyone. Sung-jo thought about the fact that he wanted everything to be exactly as he planned. He liked this story the most. The address haunted him. It seemed to him that something similar had already happened to Ian. 2 people went missing around the same time. Seong-jo may have to fork out the cash. The girl stood in the house in the same apartment where her mother was killed in complete darkness. She looked at the phone screen. Everyone claimed that it was he who killed her mother, but this was not true. She wanted her father to come back and tell everything. The girl looked at the family photo and mentally asked a question to her father, asking where he was and asking that he come back soon. Having woken up, Ian got up and tried to understand where he was. He looked around. Everything around the story was repeating itself because he had not been in the hospital so long ago. Soo-young was sitting by his bed again. He asked where the guy was, as if he had forgotten everything that was happening. Soo-young said that he was in the hospital. The guy looked at the girl in surprise. He didn't understand why he was here now. Soo-young explained that she called Yang yesterday, but a nurse answered the phone and said that the guy had lost consciousness near the hospital. The guy didn't know what to answer, because he remembered almost nothing from yesterday, and the girl's words surprised him. The guy remembered that yesterday he was knocked out, but the attack was somewhat unusual. But after a while, Ian lost consciousness. Ian caught himself thinking that everything was happening again. His body continued to move, even though he missed all the blows. The guy thought that perhaps he had stopped experiencing pain altogether, but the damage continued to accumulate. Seo-yeon said that she wouldn't believe it this time either. The guy was just working really hard at work, and she demanded answers. The girl explained that yesterday creditors broke into the guy's house. They started a pogrom and a murder case was opened. Seo-yeon immediately decided to call Yang, but she was told that he was in the hospital. She told the guy that she was still very scared. She began to ask what situation the guy was in, why his body was in extremely poor condition, and wanted to know if the people who came had anything to do with this. She expected the guy to answer her at least something, to tell the truth and somehow refute everything. But he had nothing to say. The girl realized that perhaps she had gone a little too far, because the guy had just woken up and needed rest after everything. They sat in the ward completely silently. No one said anything. Everyone was in their own thoughts and thinking about their own. The guy decided to break the silence and asked about the pogrom in his house. He was wondering if his father was there now. The girl said that his father was really there, but remembering him, she had a question whether Ian was really his son. The girl sat by the window and called Yang's father. His name was Ajusi. He ignored Seo-yeon. She asked if he heard her girlfriend report that Ian was now in the hospital. She believed that her father should know about this. Ajusi shouted because the girl scared him. He asked who she was and why she came. Seo-yeon said that he should visit his son. But the father replied that he didn't care about his son at all, and he knew that Ian wanted to run away like his mother. The girl did not at all understand this father's behavior towards his son, but what Ajusi was doing at that time really attracted her attention. He was counting the money. The girl was wondering to herself how much debt he had, that creditors were breaking into the apartment. Seo-yeon remembered the first time she saw him on the ground, completely beaten, and with a large pile of money next to him. Now she understood why he needed them, although he said that he simply needed them, and that he liked to spend the money that he earned on his own. The girl asked the man if it was Ian's money. She didn't understand why he couldn't just leave and visit his son, because he helped him a lot. The man said that he didn't feel sorry for his son at all, and that he was holding him back, doing everything, only his money. He didn't want to go to his son at all. Ian didn't know what to answer. The guy always experienced all emotions deep within himself, and now this was no exception. Seo-yeon, who was very interested in why Yang was always on his own, was also in her own thoughts at that moment. The girl began to say that all the time she considered Ian just a special child. He was silent all the time, and seemed to want to hide from the whole world. She remembered the first time Ian went to the hospital, and the guy asked her not to tell anyone anything about what was happening to him. The girl didn't understand why this was necessary, but he asked her to simply not speak without explaining anything. When they agreed to go look for an apartment together, he also asked that she not tell anyone that he needed new housing. And now, after yesterday's meeting with Ian's father, the girl understood why the guy was hiding like that. Seo-yeon said that, after the first meeting with his father, you can understand what stratum he comes from. She asked precisely because of this the guy ran away from home. When she was little, she didn't pay any attention to the noise coming from the apartment. Yana, she thought it was just a loud discussion of something. And now that she understood what the point was, She was quite uncomfortable, because all this time the guy had been suffering. Now the images she saw from Ian of their meeting and some kind of contact were now just a sad memory. She said all this and looked at the guy, and he averted his gaze because it was very uncomfortable for him to remember all this. He sat in front of the girl, and now all that dark side that he did not want to show to anyone was revealed. That was what Ian was interested in. He asked why the girl first said that she wanted to move, and then answered that she lives with her parents, and she doesn't need it. At first the girl didn't know what to answer, but then she just gave him the phone so that he could look, and then he would understand everything. Ian picked up the phone, but still didn't quite understand what he should see there, and how it would help him understand the girl. An article was opened there, which indicated the address of the girl's house, and it also said that her father was a murderer and had killed his own wife. Seon said that perhaps Young heard about this, and now there are many police officers there, but the girl does not believe that her father is a murderer. The article stated that the girl's father hit his wife, that is her mother, several times. Traces of self-defense were also found, since there was no robbery there. The police concluded that it was just a quarrel between spouses. So-yeon said that when she returned home, she saw only her father hugging her mother's corpse. His gaze was not at all like that of the person who had just killed. The girl said that a man who wouldn't hurt a fly would kill his beloved wife. It's all a lie. But people happily believed all this, because news is an example of the truth, and no one wants to believe in anything else. From that time on, the girl began to look for a new place to live, and the looks of all the people made her think that she was somehow different from everyone else. And also memories from that fateful day were spinning in her head. It was as if the girl had always seen her mother's corpse. But on the other hand, if the girl leaves the house, she will never be able to meet her father again, so she continues to live there as if nothing had happened. The girl told what had been bothering her for a long time. She asked Ian for forgiveness for getting into a very loud conversation, but he, on the contrary, thanked her for her frankness. Usually everyone is the same, trying to hide all the pain and live happily, as if nothing painful had happened in their lives. And each of them learns about each other's pain, and the views of these people always change about each other. But the most important thing is that these people can be comforted by each other's suffering when they open up. Young thanked the girl and said that he probably owed her twice already for her help. Seon said that they will talk about this later, but first he needs to heal, because he needs to go with his girlfriend to sign the lease agreement. The guy was somewhat sad, but agreed with the girl that perhaps very soon after this, he would begin a new good life. The girl looked at him and smiled tenderly, wanting the guy not to be bored. Yang noticeably blushed, but he was pleased with the care from Seon. A certain guy was very glad that this particular girl was next to him. A doctor entered Yang's ward and asked about his well-being. Everything was fine with the guy, and he asked to be discharged as soon as possible. Just when he wanted to continue his procedures, his phone vibrated and a message arrived, which surprised him very much. It was Seon who wrote to remind Yang that they had to sign the rental agreement tomorrow, and she also invited him to a group chat with his friends. There his friends asked why he was skipping university and invited him for a walk. Usually the group chat was very noisy, but Ian agreed. The guy said a reminder that he first needed to sign the rental agreement and then go with his friends for the first time, so he expected the next day. Previously there was only pain, uncertainty, only bad events, but now there is hope for the best, for bright and wonderful days. Ian believed that now he could start living again, but in such a way that life would bring him only joy, thinking that he was fast asleep about tomorrow. Song-jo appeared and affectionately congratulated Yang on the discharge of this particular person, the last thing the guy expected to see. Ian didn't understand why he was here. The guy seemed to be very frightened at the sight of him, because it said that all the good things that had just begun to appear could disappear. The guy's friends stood in front of him and asked if he had fallen asleep so that it was all a dream. They said that there was no need to waste time and go for a walk. Young exhaled and was glad that it was all a dream, and now he was going with his friends to a picnic, and no Song-jo would appear. They were in a hurry because the door to the transport was already closing, and they had to hurry to make it on time. Ian was in a very interesting place, in a good and pleasant place, but something worried him and he didn't understand what was happening. Seon asked about what happened and told him to sit next to her, because the meat was already ready. Hansu told everyone to prepare their stomachs. Hana said that everything smelled really good, and Seon asked Yang to sit down. Everything was perfect, but Ian didn't want to sit down. Something worried him very much, and he didn't understand what was happening. The guy had some very strange sensations, and something began to happen, something unreal, as if the world had become perverted. Ian began to be drawn somewhere, and he did not understand at all what it was, and whether this was really happening to him. The whole real world seemed to begin to disappear, and I, not with him the guy, seemed to be drowning in something fiery and did not know what to do with it. And it seems that Seon-jo was involved in this. He controlled Yang as if he were some kind of doll of his own. Ian fell onto the mattress. It was completely unclear where he was now. He was lying unconscious, and this whole situation seemed to be real. Someone began to approach him. The guy's eyes seemed inhuman, and there were also people in the special grading room. An older man with long gray hair raised his head and said that Yang fell just in time. This man said that the guy who fell is Ian, who is 20 years old. He is a street fighter. The man congratulated him on the zombie fight. Some man sat in this lattice and seemed to be praying, but it is unlikely that he believed in God. The woman was very grateful to the man because their daughter Seon was graduating, and the man took the day off and worked hard to create the best day for his daughter. He turned to God and said that most likely he simply doesn't see and doesn't want to believe the man and doesn't want to hear him. The woman said that their daughter would meet friends before dinner and asked the man if they should start getting ready already. But even if a man did not believe in God, he had nothing more to believe in. It was a hopeless situation. The woman asked if everything was okay with her husband because he had become somehow very strange, and this worried her. And it was then that all this happened. The man could not believe who he had turned into. Behind bars, remembering what had happened, he prayed to God to help him get rid of this hell. He asked God to get him out of here. He also asked for help in finding the monster that turned this man into a monster. And this man also asked for strength, so that God would give him enough strength so that he could kill this monster. The man sat behind bars and looked at Ian, who had just fallen from an unknown place. The guy lay unconscious. A gray-haired man approached him, raising his head. He told someone that he was just in time. This man congratulated 20-year-old Ian in the zombie battles and carried him over his shoulder, carrying him off to an unknown direction. The man sat and watched this whole situation. He had nothing to say because his grief interested him more, and he thought about it all the time. Another man who was a neighbor on the grid asked if everything was okay with him. He was really frightened by the man's condition. Father Seon replied that he was still sane and understood everything perfectly well and was in this world. The neighbor's husband replied that it is very easy to lose common sense, and when this happens, there is nothing left of a normal person. Seon's father replied that he knows what it's like to lose common sense because he's seen it more than once. There was another person who was behind bars in this room. He did not understand what had happened to him because he was leaving work, and in the blink of an eye, he ended up here. As soon as the whole room began to be covered in red light, no one understood anything, and for everyone it was very strange. A person who had been here for quite a long time understood that the worst thing that could happen to them here was beginning. Seon's father did not shield himself from the smoke at all, and said that at this moment they are on the road where they need to fight for their lives. They just got here in an unknown way, and somehow tried to shield themselves from the smoke in an unknown room. They didn't know what it was and asked about it. When the smoke completely consumed the boys' bodies, they lost consciousness, and something terrible and unknown awaited them. I had a knife in my mind. He was sitting in some strange room where there was no one. He didn't remember how he got here and didn't know at all what would happen to him. His hands were tied, and this frightened him even more. He really didn't like all this, and what would happen next was very unpleasant. The guy was thinking about how he got here because recently he was in the hospital, and now he is tied up here. Ian began to remember the last events before he ended up in this incomprehensible place. He slept soundly the day before he was discharged. Hyung remembered that someone woke him up and it was Seong-jo. Is he really involved in all this action? The door to the room was opened by the gray-haired man who brought him here. This man was unfamiliar to Ian. All this was unknown to Ian. He looked at the man and had nothing to say. That gray-haired man also stood in front of the guy and was silent. Then the man said that Yan was surprisingly very calm. As for a person, Yan was sitting tied up in an unknown room. Ian, with anxiety in his voice and fear in his eyes, asked where he was. It was important for him to know this and at least understand something. The gray-haired man easily and without objection answered that Yang was in the arena. This was very strange. The man went on to say that John was brought by one of their clients, and that John would fight, as long as their client paid them. There were a lot of people like Yang in this place, and they all had a similar fate. And the gray-haired man was their overseer. All their clients want to see everyone fight to the death, and the gray-haired man is here to help them. What awaited Ian was a terrible continuation of his life, and it was unknown how long he would be here. Some of the guys here lose their common sense and go crazy, or simply can't continue to fight. Such guys were already hopeless, and therefore the gray-haired man had to get rid of them, and did it easily and simply, as if it were an everyday thing. Ian listened to all this and had nothing to answer. He was afraid of what awaited him, and he definitely needed to survive. Ian heard strange screams. Someone said hit him, and someone just laughed. This raised quite a lot of questions in him. In the arena, there was a battle between Sayeon's father and his neighbor. They fought mercilessly, as if they did not know each other at all. The people present, each of them cheered for their favorite, and each of them shouted about good shots. They did not spare each other at all, and the fans wanted one of the opponents to die. They wanted the stronger one to survive. The gray-haired man told Ian not very good news. He definitely wouldn't like it. He said that Ian was the next participant. Young replied that he no longer participates in battles and refuses to fight, but he still has to. The gray-haired man bent down and said that no one here would ask Ian's wishes, and that at this time he was turning into monsters thirsty for blood. Ian was surprised by what he heard. He asked in fear what this man was talking about because he was scared of what would happen next. The husband showed him a table on which there were many things. He explained that there were medications that were now in the guy's body. They were designed specifically for fighters to ensure their physical capabilities function to their fullest. At first, this can be resisted, but then when the medicine takes effect, something terrible happens. With its help, a monster awakens in a person, which everyone present so wants to see, and he longs for a fight. The monster that awakens in a person sees no end to its actions and continues to destroy its opponent. But then the effect ends, and the person comes to his senses again. But of course he remembers everything that happened. The husband came to his senses and was sitting behind bars. He was alive, and this was somewhat of a surprise, but he was also interested in how his opponent was. The man asked Lim Sung-jun if he was alive, how he was feeling, and if he was really here. Then let him answer. Seon's father replied that he was alive, which couldn't help but make his neighbor happy, because they had another chance to live. The husband asked if they fought, because in his memory it was the fight with Seon's father. Seon's father replied that he also remembers their fight, so that today they were alone. Seon's father's neighbor said that there was blood all over his hands, and asked how the man was feeling. He was annoyed that they had to fight. Lim Sung-jun responded that he was just glad it was all over, but this wouldn't be their last fight. The gray-haired warden was carrying Ian somewhere. He was walking in an incomprehensible direction. Most likely he was going to the arena. The husband said that it wouldn't hurt at all. Ian would just lose his common sense, and then when he comes out of this state, he will only see the result of his work. Of course, I didn't answer anything. He couldn't do it. And the gray-haired man finally said that if the guy was lucky, he would survive. He placed Ian on an incomprehensible surface and went to the pressure to pick him up and send the guy into the arena. Finally, the gray-haired man said that Ian would be very lucky if he simply never opened his eyes again. Ian heard all this, but he could not answer anything. Something incomprehensible was happening to him. Most likely, the drugs began to act. The guy arrived at the arena. Something unfamiliar to him was happening to his body, and he could not fight it. The guy was standing in the arena. Soon his fight would begin, although he was there against his will, but he would be forced to do it. The arena was full of people. They all wanted fun, and they really liked seeing two guys fight. The guy was not himself at all. The drugs began to take effect, and he turned into what he was afraid of becoming. Everything changed again, and the hope for the best that he received and managed to feel was taken away again yesterday. It's as if God reminds him that he lives in hell, and there is no need to resist his will, but can only resign himself. His opponent immediately began to pounce on him. He was like some kind of beast that wanted nothing more than to destroy his victim. Lim Sung-jun asked if they would ever be able to escape from here, because with this substance he was losing his memory, particle by particle. He had a feeling as if he was opening his eyes and knew only this cell and fights and had no idea where he was. Seon's father's neighbor replied that while they have the opportunity, they must fight to the end, because they absolutely must not lose themselves. Seon's father agreed with his neighbor's words and replied that they couldn't just die here, and that someday they would still find a way out, or the person who saves will come to them himself while the men were talking. At that time, Ian was in the arena participating in a duel. The gray-haired man sat and watched the monitor. He did not understand how Yang acted because his actions during the battle were very strange. Those present were outraged by the guy's behavior. They believed that he was not given medication because he could not behave so believably. The man watched himself on the monitor and did not understand how he could resist because he did not show any symptoms. During the battle, Yang wanted to think about how everything was happening. People were brought here and injected with drugs, forcing them to fight to the last. Now he needed to understand who sent the guy here. He thought about it carefully enough not to miss any details. After some time, the guy realized that the one who kidnapped him was Seong-jo, who said that he could achieve his goal. Young thought about all this and then realized that Seong-jo had planned to send him here from the very beginning. The guy began to understand that he had planned this from the very beginning when he started talking about a place where he could kill. But all the kindness and curiosity on the part of Seong-jo, which he showed towards Yang, was only a means for the guy to agree to come here voluntarily. Therefore, I did not decide that if he wants to see how he fights, He will see it. But all emotions were destroyed in childhood. Yang did not show any feeling at all. It turned out that the drugs had no effect on him at all, but his opponent was under their strong influence. But Songjo must understand that despite his desire in Yang's world, the pain returns like a boomerang, and it all happens very quickly. Ian stood right in front of the camera that was filming him in the arena, and his opponent was already ready to pounce like the most evil predator. If the Lord sends suffering to a boy every time he begins to experience at least some hope for a happy life and joy. The guy thought about it but did not forget to fight and defend himself. His plans included a fight, but not the kind everyone wants. Despite how the Lord dealt with the guy, he will accept all the suffering, but will not lose hope for the best. Ian continued the fight, and it seems despite the drugs in his body he was still of sound mind. The guy decided for himself to end this war, but without any killing. He did not want to submit to what others wanted. Yang struck his opponent so that he broke the camera that was now filming them. He wanted the observers to suffer losses. Songjo held the phone in his hands and watched Yang's fight. Indeed, it was he and his innermost desires who were involved in all this. Songjo looked at this whole battle, and it caused some strange emotions in him. He saw that the guy understood everything. A message from Seonjo came to the gray-haired man's phone, where he said that he wanted Yang to continue to be in them, and he would pay. This man was Park Sang-do. He was 31 years old. He was a member of a gang, and during his stay here he had 5 matches, 3 of which were successful. This man just recently here, his name is Han Sang-chuk. He was 42. He was a simple office worker, and he only had 1 unsuccessful match. This man had been here for quite a long time. His name and age were unknown, but he had already served 124 matches, and all of them were successful. This man named Lee Seong-gu, he was 46 years old. He worked as a simple fireman. During his stay there were 21 matches, 20 of them successful. Ian, he was only 20. He was a simple street fighter who did not want this, and he had already served 1 match, which was successful. All these fighters were members of Block A. They did not want to be here and wanted to get out of here as quickly as possible. A gray-haired man stood in front of them and told them not to make a sound, so that there would be silence and no noise in this room. Park Sang-do asked what this action was, despite the words of the gray-haired man who said not to make a sound. He was outraged that he was locked in a cage and now forced to remain silent. He threatened to go out and kill everyone who was involved in this. The gray-haired man said quite calmly that this bandit from a series of 3 defeats, such words were completely incomprehensible to him. This meant that during 3 defeats, one after another, a fighter loses his value. This man had 2 defeats. The warden continued to say that he was very surprised that this bandit was still alive, because he was losing and losing meant death. Park Sang-do was outraged by these words, and he didn't want to listen to them anymore. He spat at the caretaker and said, or he didn't recognize, because each of them can die. The warden was angry with these words, and taking some kind of fiery stick, he poked him in the body and told them to come to terms with the fact that they would never get out. Park Sang-do sat and suffered. He decided not to say anything more, because he understood that it would not be good for him. Han Sang-chuk looked at the gray-haired man passing nearby. He thought that it was the caretaker. The man was instilling fear. For a simple office worker, this caretaker was quite large in build and intimidating just by looking at him. The warden who approached Yan did not understand what he wanted from him, because he was silent and did not raise questions. The warden said that the client was disappointed with the way Ian fought. He was ordered to now put the guy in every fight from today. The gray-haired man replied that it was completely unknown how Ian managed not to be affected by the medicine. But after a few fights he would still be exposed. Sion's father and his neighbor were very surprised when they heard this. It aroused their curiosity, and they wanted to know more about it. The warden said that the client would pay for Yang to fight continuously, and this client was the biggest sponsor of their fights. Finally, he defiantly said that he would see Ian, who had held out for so long, and Ian, who wished him good luck, did not answer anything. Sion's father walked closer to his cage to ask Yang how he was feeling, since he was also in the arena today. Ian heard everything well, but was not going to answer that there was no one to talk to here. He didn't know anyone here at all. The man continued to say that they are all in the same boat here, and therefore there is no need to worry, so the guy can relax. The guy listened to all this but was not yet going to answer. He was in his own thoughts, thinking about something. Sion's father's neighbor asked if Yang really wasn't affected by the medicine, and if he remembered where he was during the match. Everyone was interested to know how the guy did it, but he continued to remain silent, completely in his own thoughts. Park Sang-do was infuriated by Yang's behavior. He shouted to get attention and said that now everyone is turning to Yang. He continued to shout that they were all being held against their will, and they needed to share information in order to escape from here. Seon's father told everyone to calm down, because this guy had just been here for a short time and he needed to calm down. But the man did not want to calm down. He shouted that they could die at any moment, so let him think quickly and speak. An office worker came in and said that Ian was definitely in his right mind during the fight, because he was his opponent, and he remembers the fight. Seon's father's neighbor asked if he was sure, because if his opponent were his, he wouldn't remember anything at all. He agreed with the man's words, but said that after he saw his opponent, he lost consciousness and survived only because Ian was in his memory. The husband came closer to Ian and thanked him for the fact that he was still alive and the guy had not been cruel to him. The man began to say that he was beginning to understand that this was a salary place. He introduced himself to Ian and said that he was pleased to meet you. Park Sang-doo started screaming again. He was furious that these people took the time to get to know each other. He said that they were not at all in nature. Han Sang-chuk began to say that he didn't mean that at all. It's just that in a team everyone should support each other. But that man didn't understand this. Seon's father's neighbor said that it didn't seem like Yang wanted to talk to them, and he needed to rest a little. Park Sang-doo was still angry, and said that the company that had formed was simply the worst that could exist, calling those present dumb and cowards. A whole hour had already passed. They were sitting, and the camera was filming them. After looking at Seon's father's neighbor, Park Sang-doo asked the man how long he had been here, but he sat calmly in place and had no intention of answering this question. One could say that he was not at all interested. The husband knocked on the wall and bent over to draw Ian's attention. The guy didn't understand what he needed because they had been sitting in silence for a long time. The husband said that if the guy can't speak, then just let the man knock on the wall twice. Before he could finish speaking, Ian interrupted him and said that he could talk. He just needed time to think. My husband said that silence is the worst choice because one of the worst effects is gradual memory loss. Therefore, every time everyone tells each other their memories in order to preserve them, without this they would simply lose common sense, not remembering anything. Moreover, the people holding them here are very meticulous. They kidnapped and killed many, but not a single person has escaped yet. The only way to get out of this place is to join forces, because every person is worth their weight in gold. The man explained that this is why it is very important for the guy to talk about himself while he remembers at least something, so that others will preserve his memories. Ian, a 20-year-old street fighter, asked if he had family and friends, how he ended up here and who sent him here. To begin with, Ian decided to talk about the person who made it, so that Ian is now in this terrible place. This man approached his family and friends to find out more information about the guy. This man was Song Ji-won, the worst person Yang had ever had in his life, and the guy wanted to destroy him. He came to the creditors and said that every debtor must repay his debts. The man was shocked to see him. The man did not understand how they were found, but Seong-jo quickly reassured them and said that he had a small gift for them. He showed a photo of Ian's father and said that he spends a lot of money without thinking that it needs to be returned in order to get rid of the loan. The man was shocked by what he heard. Son also added that a joshi even rents rooms in a hotel. This is not acceptable for a debtor. Song-jo said that his son earns a lot of money, but his father does not want to pay, and he gave the address where the man is now, encouraging him to go to him. Song-jo said that the man does not respect creditors and spends the money that he should have given them. He expected some action from them. The man, having heard all this, was very angry. He understood that this was unfair, and he needed to act somehow to establish justice. Song-jo said that at his request, he made it so that Ajusi could no longer borrow money. He skillfully manipulated. Everything went according to plan, but the icing on the cake was the money waiting for Father Ian in the house. He was very happy to see it. Seon was very worried and wrote to Yang. She didn't understand where he had disappeared from the hospital, because they had plans and things to do with signing an agreement. The girl called a lot of times, but the phone was turned off. The guy seemed to have fallen through the ground. Seon had to justify herself to the woman as a real estate agency worker. The woman said to be understood because she also couldn't wait long. Seon thought that he was not at home in the hospital, and she did not understand where he had disappeared so quickly and what to do. The red-haired guy stood outside the hospital and screamed because Ian had disappeared, and he wanted to fight with him again. So he didn't understand where the guy had disappeared. The red-haired guy wanted to find Yang Seong-jo, said that he would help him in this, but the red-haired guy ignored it. Sung-jo realized that this made no sense at all, because the red-haired guy would not listen to him. Ajusi was in some club. The girl sitting next to him was interested in where he got so much money for entertainment. He said that they themselves came to him. It was very strange, and the girl did not believe it, and mockingly asked if money could really walk. The husband replied that it was worth believing, because the money came right to his doorstep. The girl said that she would go for a drink, and the man's face changed. He thought about his son. His husband believed that it was Ian who left him so much money and did not understand why he did it. The man began to remember all the moments when his son said that he would definitely help in any way he could, and now, apparently, he helped. Ajusi remembered how the guy gave him a bank card, and the total came out to 16 million. And all this was for his father to get rid of debts. The man also remembered Sion seeing the money and saying that Yang was working non-stop, and the father should go visit his son. But upon leaving the toilet, the man said to himself that there was no point in him apologizing for anything, as if everything was as it should have been. He began to wash his hands, and here a creditor approached from behind, whom Sunjo had sent. The man came here furious, because Ajusi did not return the money. The man stood behind and said that Ajusi lives very well. At first he did not understand why this man was telling him, and his words surprised Ajusi very much. But when he turned around, he instantly realized what kind of person was standing in front of him. And of course, Ajusi understood what he needed, because debts had to be repaid. The husband poked Ajusi's face into the mirror. It was clear that he was in pain and was afraid of the creditor's further actions. Ajusi did not know how to proceed. Ian's father asked him to cut his hair, but the man became even more furious and began to destroy his deceitful debtor for his unjust actions. The creditor said that he was not finished yet, and everything was just beginning. He noticed that he gave Ajusi a lot of concessions if he became so impudent. Ajusi lay on the ground beaten, but this was not the end. He listened to the words of the creditor but had no answer because he was absolutely right. The creditor said, turning to the man, that what goes around comes around. And then this man said that there was no need to be so cruel to him. All this was said about Yana. Ajusi asked not to be killed. The creditor demanded that he repay his debts, remembering that his son had recently earned a large amount of money. The creditor asked where his son was, but he didn't know. He said that the guy ran away from the house without saying anything, and they pulled a couple of bills out of his pocket. The creditor demanded that Ajusi give the key to the house. The man believed that all the money was there, and he would collect the debts. Ajusi was scared, and didn't want to do it, because there really was a lot of money there, and he didn't want the creditors to take it. He didn't want to repay the debts. Ajusi tried to somehow avoid this, but the man cruelly grabbed him by the hair and said that he knew everything, so there was no point in hiding anything. Those present in the room heard something happening among themselves. Some said that this is the freak who comes here to throw away money. The man was completely beaten. Walking down a dark street, he was disappointed in life and deeply in debt and needed to pay off everything. Ajusi came home in a very bad condition. There was no one at home. It's unlikely that Ian would have been able to get out of the place where he is now. On the table, instead of money, there were some strange pills. It was unknown where they came from and who left them there. Ajusi thought that his son was at home. He called out to him, but no one responded. The man was still in front of the unknown pills. He began to take a closer look at the tablets and did not understand at all what they were doing here. It interested him very much. Sion appeared in the blink of an eye. She was glad that Ajusi finally came home. She asked if Yang was with him. The husband was angry to see the girl and told her that Ian ran away and asked the girl not to come again in vain. Instantly, the girl drew attention to Ajusi's face and asked what was wrong with him. And then she noticed what interested her more. It was some man standing behind Ajusi. The girl asked Ajusi who the man was standing behind him, but he did not understand what the girl was talking about and was very surprised to hear this. Ajusi turned around to see what the girl was talking about and saw a guy standing and not moving. He looked very strange. Seeing him, Ajusi got scared and asked who he was and where he came from. All this was very suspicious. The girl looked at the guy carefully and realized that she knew him. She definitely remembered that she had seen him somewhere. This whole situation was not good. And then she remembered on the day of graduation the girl was running home because she was very lost with her friends, and her parents were definitely tired of waiting. And now Sion understood that she saw this guy near her house on the day of her mother's death. He seemed very strange to her. The girl happily ran into the house and said that she simply forgot to watch the time ago and asked for forgiveness from her parents. But then, when she entered the room, she saw a terrible picture, which greatly shocked her and frightened her at the same time. Her father sat on the ground, holding her mother's body in his hands. He was not himself. And when the daughter appeared on the threshold of the house, the father immediately began to run away from the house, as if he were a murderer. The girl fell to the ground, not understanding anything at all. She was frightened by the picture that was now before her eyes. She did not know what to do. Before her eyes lay the body of her mother's dearest person, who was killed for no reason, and her father disappeared as someone involved in her murder. Sion inexplicably decided to call an ambulance. She wanted her mother to be saved, but it was too late. Then when she called an ambulance, she felt someone's gaze and turned around and saw the same guy who was standing on the street. The girl realized that this guy was then in their apartment and saw everything. But why exactly this guy was unknown and what way he was involved. The girl's father most likely ran after this guy, but then disappeared without a trace just like that guy and no one found them. The girl was very interested in who this guy was. She was very surprised to see him. She asked if he was there and if he saw everything. He began to approach the man. This began to scare him, and he did not understand what would happen next. He grabbed Ajushi by the neck and began to choke him even though Sion could see him. Knocking Ajushi to the ground, he began to grab the pills that were on the table and stuff them into him. This terrible, incomprehensible guy killed Ajushi without any regret, but he looked up in surprise. The girl saw everything from beginning to end, and the guy probably didn't understand this. Sion was shocked by what she saw. The girl was very scared. The guy ran out of the apartment, and perhaps she was in danger. She needed to quickly run to the police.